January 2nd, 2020, second day of the new year.
The boiler in the main character's small apartment stopped working. A guy with dark hair and a blue t-shirt looks at the steam-shrouded pipes, frowning. He thought he must have rented a house where the boiler was already on the verge of breaking down. Slapping his slippers on the floor, an elderly man shouted that young people do not know how to save on heating at all. Waving his broom, he yelled at them to just put on their socks and seal up the windows. The residents looked at him from their apartments. The man shouted that he told them not to load the boiler so much. The main character thought irritably that this old man had previously hinted to him that the boiler would not hold up at some point. He thought that if he went and told him now that the boiler was broken, he would definitely blame it on him, tell him to pay for the repairs and then raise the rent because he didn't take good care of the house or something. He thought that he would be happy to bury it somewhere in the yard, but there would be problems later. The wind was blowing in the shabby apartment and cobwebs were visible in the corner. The main character thought that his life since childhood was hard and painful, so a nice shower suits him even more than a hot one. Shivering from the cold, he hugged his hands and sneezed. He thought that this room was rather cold. He thought that maybe the old man's words had brainwashed him, because he almost immediately went to buy film to cover the windows. He stood at the entrance to the balcony, shivering from the cold. The main character thought it was called the butterfly effect. A flutter of a wing can cause a hurricane on the other side of the planet. Back then, he didn't know that an ordinary broken boiler would completely change his life. January 2nd, 2020, 9 o'clock in the evening, a guy wearing a black hoodie asked a store employee where the film was stored here. The girl replied with a smile that she was to the right of a large pillar with the letter F. He walked along the store shelves and thought that they really did have everything. The child, holding a wrench in his hand, asked his father if he would buy him one. The man in the blue shirt asked why he needed a wrench. He told him to put it down. Brandishing a wrench, the child said that it has a very comfortable handle. The protagonist thought that Lee Wai-young was, according to the owner of the shelter, a name given to him by a father he had never met. He thought about how Wa means peaceful and Yun means reach. Putting his hands in his pockets, he reflected that, for the owner of a name that meant peaceful achievement, he was living the exact opposite life. His parents abandoned him as a child, and the shelter gave him only a roof over his head and food. Two larger boys dressed in white beat up a frightened little boy. Little Lee Wai-young will punch another boy in the face with his fist while the adult tries to hold him down. Lee Wai-young thought that this place had reinforced his belief that he should become stronger. He decided that money was the main source of power, so all he did was work, even in high school. Unfortunately, with poor educational success and no income, he could not count on anything but part-time work. Lee Wai-young, dressed in a courier's work clothes, gives the package to the customer. He gives him money in return, and the main character takes it, his eyes narrowing in displeasure. If Lee Wai-young has learned anything during his career, it's that the price of his time is a pittance. He thought of the world as a cruel place. Lee Wai-young stands in front of a rack with a machete. Smiling, he picked up the machete in his hand and thought about how stylish it looked. The girl quietly asked the guy with the cart what was wrong with the main character, and why he was smiling with a machete in his hands. The guy said he didn't know and said he wouldn't go near him. Lee Wai-young's smile was reflected in the machete blade, and he thought that it brought back memories. When Lee Wai-young realized that his hard work wasn't worth 10,000 won even if he sold himself into slavery, and that orphans couldn't serve in the military, he became a mercenary and participated in countless wars around the world as a member of the First Squad. The First Squad is an international mercenary band made up of orphans and social outcasts. In other words, those who have nothing to lose. People like Lee Wai-young were given a bed, clothes, and money for the rest of their lives. He couldn't help but be grateful. They teamed up, getting rid of pirates in the seas and beheading terrorists on land. Sometimes, Lee Wai-young even participated in international wars to earn his own price. Putting her hands on the machete, the salesgirl said that it was worth 240,000 won. She asked him what he was buying it for. She explained that it was much more suitable for a collection than for logging or camping, and said she could show him more practical machetes. Lee Wai-young replied that it was fine and it suited him. He had been thinking about buying a new machete for a long time, because it was very blunt and it was enough for him to hold it in his hands to feel its power. The main character pointed his finger at the film behind the saleswoman and asked for 10 meters. The girl began to cut off the film with a stationary knife. The cut was rough and jagged. Lee Wai-young thought irritably that this knife was so blunt that she couldn't even cut straight. He told her to stand back. The saleswoman raised her head questioningly. Lee Wai-young raised the machete and swung it in front of him. She stared at the neatly cut film in surprise. The main character turned around when he heard the noise. A crowd of people were bustling around something, saying that it was like someone was real. Someone asked me to take a picture with him. A huge shadow fell over the surprised people. Lee Wai-young's eyes widened in surprise. A small goblin with a knife jumped at the fleeing people. The fleeing guy looked back in surprise. The goblin leaped towards him with a vicious smile, swinging its knife. Blood gushed out of the guy's body. He fell to the ground dead, and the goblin crouched down in front of him. The main character paled in surprise and thought that he looked like a goblin from a video game. The goblin was devouring the corpse with an evil smile. He turned to Lee Wai-young with a bloody mouth. The main character recoiled in surprise. The goblin leaped at him, knife in hand. Lee Wai-young chopped off his head with a swing of the machete. He asked me what was going on here. Shopping center building. The floor of the trading floor was smeared with blood, and there were bodies and trash everywhere. A scream rang out. Lee Wai-young was breathing heavily, smeared with green blood. He was holding a machete. Frowning, he thought that the smell of blood was unbearable. When he heard the cry for help, he turned around. There were bloodied bodies on the floor. A few goblins are standing there, smiling maliciously. The woman covers the little girl, and they tremble in fright. She is frightened and asks for help. The main character swung his machete, cutting one of the goblins in half. The woman asked what was going on and where they were coming from. The little girl snuggled up to her chest in fright. The main character looked at them blankly. He looked down at his machete in exasperation and thought that with this blade, it was more of a crushing weapon than a cutting one. He decided that he needed to find something more suitable. His eyes widened in surprise. There was a huge crowd of goblins in front of him. Gritting his teeth and thrusting the machete forward, he thought that they weren't running out. The guys behind nothing let out a battle cry. Several guys are fighting goblins with improvised means. The guy in the black t-shirt hit the goblin's head with an axe. A guy with blue hair and red glasses was sitting in a corner, holding his head in his hands and shaking, begging God to save him. A chainsaw blade appeared in front of his face, and he raised his head. Lee Wai-young told him that this wasn't a dream and panicking wouldn't help. He told him to get up if he wanted life and added that prayers would not save him. The main character thought that right now, he just wanted to increase the number of goblins resisting. The four guys took up a fighting stance. The guy in the black t-shirt is armed with an axe, the guy with blonde hair is armed with a nail gun, and the guy with glasses and the main character is armed with chainsaws. The bespectacled guy turned around when he saw the goblin approaching. He cut his head open with a chainsaw. Lee Wai-young turned to him and praised him with a smile. The guy looked down in shock, covered in green blood. The main character thought that even if someone is weak in body and spirit, the instinct of self-preservation will give them the strength to survive. The guy in the gray shirt called them to look away. The black sphere was wrapped in a bright vortex of blue energy, shielding his face from the light with his hand. Lee Wai-young said that he was sure that the monsters were coming from there and they needed to destroy this thing. The guy in the gray shirt asked how they should do it. He said he didn't know. Two goblins emerged from the portal with vicious smiles. Among the shelves of the store, the bloodied bodies of humans and goblins lie on the floor. Lee Wai-young and a guy with glasses are hiding behind a display case. The protagonist thought that things were only getting worse and the number of goblins climbing out of the rift hadn't decreased at all and the resistance energy was plummeting. No one can even imagine how to get rid of them once and for all. The main character looked out from behind the shelter and thought that their appearance was also inexplicable. The spatial rift that the goblins come out of would have thrown even the most brilliant scientists into disarray. Several goblins devoured the corpse of a woman. Lee Wai-young counted from 5 to 1. The guy with glasses asked what he was talking about. The main character replied that there are 10 goblins in each wave and there are exactly 10 minutes between each wave. Frowning, he said there were 26 of them now and in 10 minutes there would be 10 more. The biggest problem is that even if Lee Wai-young understands the whole situation, he doesn't know how to resolve it. In addition, not everything in this store is a good weapon. Heavy weapons such as axes, crowbars, chainsaws, and sledgehammers will consume too much energy and yet they can only be used in close combat, face-to-face with monsters. One wrong step and you can become their food. Many of the people in the store are already dead and those who fought at full strength look completely exhausted. Gritting his teeth, Lee Wai-young thought that things would be different if he had a firearm. Someone gave the command, fire. There was a flash in the muzzle of the rocket launcher. They noticed the explosion behind them. Several armed soldiers entered the room and they announced that the counter-terrorism task force of the Metropolitan Defense Command was speaking. They said they were under their protection from now on. They told them to help the wounded and move towards them.
A tank entered the room. Soldiers are firing automatic weapons.
The goblin is shot in the back before it can attack the man with the child in front of it. The shop assistant covered her head with her hands as the shot hit the goblin behind her.
Lowering the chainsaw, Lee Wai-young exhaled.
The goblin's corpse fell to the floor in front of him, spilling green blood. The guy with glasses thanked the main character. He said with an awkward smile that his name was Kim Bo-won. The main character indifferently replied that he was tired. He stood up and turned away, telling him to go where he needed to go. He thought that he was tired of weaklings. One of the main lessons he'd learned from his years as a mercenary was that weak people were the heaviest burden. Lee Wai-young doesn't want to drag around with ballast, especially when the danger isn't over yet. Kim Bo-won gritted his teeth in fright as he held the chainsaw in his hands. The main character thought that with the arrival of armed soldiers, the need for someone like Kim Bo-won became even less. He walked over to the soldiers who were shooting at the goblins. Gritting his teeth, he cursed. He noticed that the soldiers' breathing was labored and their stance was unstable. He concluded that they were not much better than he was.
Goblins rushed forward, dodging bullets.
Lee Wai-young gritted his teeth. He held out his hand to the soldier and told him to give him the machine gun. He said that he was Lee Wai-young, a member of the first squad. Surprised, the soldier asked me to repeat it. Lee Wai-young snatched the submachine gun out of the soldier's hands with an indifferent face.
Another soldier started swearing, asking how he even let them take his weapons.
The main character took aim. The soldiers shouted to detain him. Lee Wai-young started firing his submachine gun, effectively taking out the goblins. The soldiers looked at him in surprise.
One of them asked if he was imagining it.
Another said that he was from the first squad. The soldier asked in surprise if he was talking about the most ruthless mercenary group in the world.
Lee Wai-young was firing a submachine gun with an indifferent expression on his face. The shot hit the goblin in front of the boy and girl.
A soldier standing behind the main character motioned for the woman with the child to follow him.
The shot hit the goblin in the chest.
Soldiers helped people evacuate amid bloodied shopping malls. The dialogue box says, "Game restart."
Lee Wai-young looked at the dialogue box in surprise.
He clutched his head, closing his eyes. He thought about how incredible things had happened one after another from the moment he entered this shop, but his head only started to ache with the appearance of this window in front of his eyes. The main character thought that he doesn't know what kind of game it is, but the fact that it says reload, not load, confuses him even more. He had never seen such hideous monsters or something like that spatial rift. No one in this hardware store had ever seen anything like it.
A monster's arm emerged from the rift.
Turning away from the dialogue box, Lee Wai-young decided that trying to understand what was going on would be stupid. It occurred to him that things had happened since he'd come to the store that couldn't be logically explained. He turned around in surprise when he heard a loud sound.
A huge orc emerged from the rift and let out a loud roar.
Soldiers fired automatic weapons at him as people hurriedly ran away from the store. The orc covered his face from the bullets with his hand.
Bullets bounced off his body.
The main character shot at him, gritting his teeth, and shouted that they had no effect on him. The main character and soldiers fire at the orc with machine guns as it slowly approaches them.
Someone jumped, swinging an axe.
Kim Boon sliced through the orc's legs with a swing of his axe. Standing behind the fallen orc, she said that the lower half of the orc's body is its weakness, and if you make them lose their balance, it will not be difficult to deal with them.
Lee Wai-young looked at him in surprise as he lowered his weapon. The soldier in the back asked who the guy was. The protagonist was surprised to think that this person was definitely a weakling. Just half an hour ago, he had been cowering in a corner and trembling at the sight of the little goblin, but the one who had just dealt with the orc without any problems seemed to know absolutely everything. Kim Boon chopped off the orc's head with an axe blow. He dealt with it with confidence and precision. Kim Boon stands over the dead orc with a calm face. The main character and soldiers are standing in front of a dead orc. Several more orcs emerged from the rift. Kim Boon calmly turned around. Lee Wai-young opened his mouth in surprise.
A small boy with a wrench in his hand charged, swinging the wrench. The main character realized that this is the same boy who a couple of hours ago begged his father to buy him a wrench. Fighting orcs with only the knowledge of their vulnerabilities is reckless, especially with such a small and fragile body. However, he cuts up orcs as if he has dozens of years of experience. The boy kicked the orc's legs and it fell to the floor.
Li Huayang turned around in surprise. The saleswoman was twirling the chain in the air like a lasso. He thought about how the employee who cut his film was acting the same way and killing orcs left and right, and only a cold calmness could be seen in her eyes. She swung the chain, and the orc fell forward, smashing his face into the ground. The man named Kim Boon, who was currently chopping down an orc with an axe, is the same guy who fell to his knees and prayed at the sight of a goblin. Like this boy who begged his dad like a normal child, like the employee who spoke to him with kindness and gentleness. The main character doesn't understand what's going on here. The soldier ordered a ceasefire. The people behind Li Huayang cheered that their prayers had been answered and they were saved. He wondered what the difference was between those who had changed dramatically and were fighting the orcs and the others, and what was the reason for this transformation. A blue dialogue box appeared in front of Li Huayang's face. It says, "There is no training here. However, you can ask 3 questions about the game. Choose your questions wisely." The main character drew attention to the words about training and questions. The mercenary squad stands with weapons in their hands, and in front of them stands Li Huayang with a machete in his hand. Their eyes glow blue. Li Huayang has a nickname that was given to him when he joined the most ruthless mercenary group in the world and fought in countless wars: fearless, someone who is not afraid of anything. It was invented by foreigners from his squad, as he always kept calm and reasonable, regardless of the situation. Thanks to these traits, he could survive in disorderly battles, among numerous shells and debris. The blue dialogue box says, "The right to ask questions is given to all people selected to become players." Li Huayang once again realized that trying to understand the situation was a stupid idea. Looking at the dialogue box, the main character said that this is no longer funny. He thought that he had no doubt that the writing before his eyes, like everything else that had happened, was real. Dead orcs and goblins lie on the floor, hacked to pieces. Li Huayang asked what was going on here. He said it was his first question. A voice came out of the dialogue box saying that this is the end of the world and a system designed to test humanity. And this is a combination of video game features that people like so much. The main character strictly said to stop talking nonsense. The dialogue box told him to choose his questions wisely and added that he didn't have to ask them right now. Frowning, Li Huayang thought that this mechanical voice sounded like a woman's and it annoyed him. He thought that if he could break through monsters with brute force, it wouldn't work here, because he didn't have a physical body and only communicated through text and voice. A voice from the dialogue box told the main character that the status window was available from now on. The dialogue box says that the status window is unlocked. A voice from the dialogue box said that people all over the world were chosen to become players, and he is currently in Korea. The voice asked him to call up the status window. Raising an eyebrow, he was about to say that he didn't care about the status window, but he was interrupted by the status window appearing in front of him. Li Huayang chuckled nervously. He thought it was getting more interesting, and the delusional report about video games in the real world turned out to be true. The voice from the dialogue box said that this was proof that he had become a player and that there were gates all over the world. The voice said that these gates are connected to dungeons, but the main character interrupted him and asked if he understood correctly that he needed to train to cope with monsters and prevent humanity from dying out. He thought that as soon as the system mentioned video games, the situation became a little clearer, and instead of listening to him talk, he wanted to ask a more important question. A voice from the dialogue box told him that he was learning fast. Li Huayang asked why the boy, the employee, and the bespectacled guy had changed so dramatically. The voice replied that it didn't have an answer and suggested that they were just natural players. The main character wanted to say something, but the dialogue box turned red, making an incomprehensible sound, and it said, "Error." Li Huayang looked at the red dialogue box in surprise and asked what was going on. The red dialogue box says, Li Huayang is the only non-regressed player. To keep the balance in the game, this player will receive a unique skill. Search for a unique skill. The main character was surprised to ask about the fact that everyone regressed except him. To regress is to go back from the future to the past. This word is familiar to the main character because he has shouted many times in the middle of a brutal battlefield that he wants to take everything back. Li Huayang is on his knees in the middle of a bloody battlefield littered with corpses, shouting and holding up his palms. He thought that everything was getting clearer now from the message about the game being rebooted to how ordinary people dealt with orcs so easily. He remembered Kim Bo-on taking out an axe from a dead orc, a boy hitting the orc with a wrench, and a shop employee twisting a chain in the air. Li Huayang realized that all the system's nonsense was true, which meant that the report that he was the only player who didn't regress was probably also true. Gritting his teeth, he cursed and asked what the point was.
It was at this point that he realized that everyone else had regressed. Looking at the blue dialogue box, Lee Hwa-young sighed and said that he would ask another question. The dialogue box says, search for a unique skill. The woman slapped the main character on the back and asked what he was doing. She told him to go and help the others fight because he was so good at it. Turning to her with a grim expression, he said that when there were monsters in front of her, she was afraid to make a sound, so it was better for her to keep quiet. The woman was frightened. He asked her if she had regressed. She asked in surprise what it was. Lee Hwa-young replied that it means going back to the past from the future. She asked him what he was talking about. The protagonist calmly raised his eyebrows. Thanks to her, he understood something else. After seeing the strange creatures that suddenly appeared in the system messages, he began to realize that only those who became players regressed. As if trying to prove that they are from the future, these players kill orcs by attacking only their weak spots, and Lee Hwa-young is the only one who doesn't know the future. He frowned and pointed, deciding not to jump to conclusions. Kim Bo-won approached him and asked if he could introduce himself again. He said that he was the reason he was able to become a player, and he had been looking for him all his life from dungeon to dungeon all over Korea because he needed to meet him. He said with a smile that this day was what changed his life. Lee Hwa-young asked if this was true. Kim Bo-won said that if he hadn't helped him and given him a chainsaw, he would never have become a gambler and would have been hiding in the basement for the rest of his life like everyone else. The protagonist calmly thought that these were definitely the words of a person who had visited the future. Kim Bo-won said with a smile that the only reason he was successful as a player was because Lee Hwa-young was an example to him. The main character asked him if he knew him well. He replied that there wasn't a single player in Korea who didn't know him because he was the player who entered the last dungeon. Lee Hwa-young was surprised. He thought that as soon as he began to understand the situation a little, he was being told another term that he was hearing for the first time in his life. He started to say something and Kim Bo-won enthusiastically said that he was listening to him. Many admiring people gathered around him. The shop employee put her hand on her chest and said that it was a great honor to meet the player who entered the last dungeon, and she didn't know it back then. She said that she couldn't believe that the person she fought hand in hand with in the beginning was Lee Hwa-young. A boy with a wrench in his hand said that he would remember until the day he died how he entered the final dungeon, giving the middle finger to all the reporters. The protagonist thought about how all these people were fighting orcs. In other words, they are all regressed players. Kim Bo-won asked the main character to talk about what happened in the last dungeon. Lee Hwa-young noticed that they were always talking about a place called the last dungeon. A blue dialogue box appeared in front of his face. The dialogue box says, search for a unique skill completed. Please check the status window. The next blue dialogue box says, butterfly effect, first level. As the only one who has not regressed, you will earn extra points for each action you take that changes the future. Lee Hwa-young's eyes widened in surprise. He understands perfectly well what the butterfly effect is. He thought that the flutter of a butterfly's wing might cause a hurricane on the other side of the planet. Looking at the dialogue box, Lee Hwa-young thought about the extra points. A loud sound rang out, and everyone turned in the direction of the sound. Several orcs emerged from the rift. The regressors ran to attack. The main character with a calm face began to shoot from the machine gun and thought that just now the orcs had come running. Apart from the status window, after becoming a player, Lee Hwa-young started to see the name and level of the monster above his head. On the blue dialogue box above the orc was written, Orc, second level. 2 shots hit the orc's head, pushing it back. The orc growled angrily, its eyes glowing red. The main character thought about the fact that bullets do almost no damage to orcs and firearms cannot penetrate their thick skin. Weapons that are not designed for combat only work against orcs because they are used by regressors. The regressors and orcs launched an attack on each other. Lee Hwa-young thought about how they had a clear understanding of the orcs' weaknesses, and they were aiming for the areas that weren't as strong as the rest of their bodies. The store employee threw the chain forward, wrapping it around the orc's leg. The main character does not shoot at orcs because the size of the cartridges is much smaller than the size of these hulks. Kim Bo-won will hit the orc in the leg with an axe. Even if the bullet did hit the orc's ligaments, the damage it would simply not be enough to disarm them. Lee Hwa-young handed the machine gun to the soldier. As he picked up the chainsaw from the floor, he thought that the power of regression was truly amazing. Looking ahead, he saw an axe. He raised the axe. The blue dialogue box says, unique skill butterfly effect activated. You changed the future, plus 1 extra point. The main character asked in surprise if he had changed the future. He laid the axe on the floor and picked up the drill. A blue dialog box appeared in front of him, which says, Unique Skill Butterfly Effect activated. You change the future, plus 1 extra point. The orc charged at him from behind. Li Huaiyang abruptly threw the axe at him. The axe struck the orc in the knee. It clattered to the floor. The main character ran up to him and swung the axe. With a blow of his axe, he chopped off the orc's head. The blue dialog box says, Unique Skill Butterfly Effect activated. You change the future, plus 1 extra point. While climbing it, the main character asked Kim Bowen if he had used an axe last time. He replied that he used a chainsaw. With a slight smile, Li Huaiyang thought that he understood now. If he does something that he didn't do in the past, it is considered a change in the future. He's not entirely sure, but it all seems to fit. What he is doing now must be the opposite of what he did in his previous life. Kim Bowen told him that he had single-handedly killed 3 orcs in the past. The main character asked how. Kim Bowen pointed to the side. There were buckets of solvent on the shelves, a substance that helps make solidified paint running again, and it also ignites very well. Grinning, Li Huaiyang said it was interesting. Looking at the buckets of solvent, he thought that he had the same idea as before to set the orcs on fire with solvent. This means that if Li Huaiyang kills the orcs without using solvent, the future will be different. Or, for example, he can use it to kill all of them or not kill any of them. He took 1 bucket from the shelf. The blue dialog box says, Unique Skill Butterfly Effect activated. You changed the future, plus 1 extra point. Exhausted players agreed to participate in the main character's plan. They immobilized the orcs by destroying their Achilles tendons or knee joints, after which he poured solvent on them and then set them on fire. The blue dialog box says, Unique Skill Butterfly Effect activated. You changed the future, plus 1 extra point. Level up, plus 3 extra points. Li Huaiyang stands surrounded by flames. He thought that now he was convinced. If he does the opposite of what he did in the past, he will get extra points. He thought he didn't know what they were for, but that wasn't new. He thought that even without allocating points to his stats, he could chop off orcs' heads without any problems. The blue dialog boxes say, Brave Newbie Achievement received. This achievement is given to players who complete the hunt without spending extra points. For getting this achievement, you will receive a skill. Armor, first level, strengthens the player's defense. The strength of the armor is proportional to the strength characteristic of the player. Li Huaiyang raised his eyebrows in surprise as he looked at the dialog box. Blue energy enveloped him. His hands turned black. Looking down at his hands, he asked what they were. The guy gritted his teeth, cursed softly, and said that he thought he was going to get this skill this time. The girl with the metal pipe frowned and quietly asked when he even managed to get it. Turning to them, the main character asked what was wrong and if it was a problem that he got this skill. The guy and the girl were scared. The girl frowned and said that it was a problem because he was using it to crush the whole of Korea. The guy gritted his teeth and said he couldn't believe he'd missed out on getting it. Calmly raising his eyebrows, Li Huaiyang thought that it must have been his skill in the past, at least judging from the fact that the butterfly effect wasn't activated. The future only changes if he does something new, but the skill didn't activate when he got Brave Newbie in armor. The rift began to glow with purple energy. Kim Bowen, who was standing behind the main character, was looking at him with a cold gaze. They are facing a fault. The blue dialog box says, Orc and Goblin Dungeon. Goblins, 11. Orkov, 8. Maximum number of players, 4. Dungeon difficulty, D. Li Huaiyang thought that the goal of this game was definitely to destroy the human race. There are a fixed number of monsters in the dungeons, and after a certain amount of time, they come out of their gates and start destroying everything around them. He remembered Kim Bowen saying that there were 10 goblins in each wave, and there were exactly 10 minutes between each wave. He remembered the monsters coming out of the gate. He thought that this gate connected these dungeons full of monsters to the ground. Li Huaiyang thought that there was only one way to break them. He said that they needed to kill all the monsters as soon as possible. He thought that the number of monsters in the dungeon and the maximum number of players that can enter it are listed in the dungeon information. The difficulty of a dungeon is also important, as it shows how rare skills and items can be obtained in it. Li Huaiyang said that the difficulty of this dungeon means that there won't be anything higher than rare. Looking at the dialogue box, he thought that he had a reason to go there anyway. He wants to test something, or rather, test the stats he's gained in the newfound armor skill. He thought that since he had no information about the world, unlike the others, he needed a more obvious power, because the real power is physical power. The blue dialog box said, armor, first level, strengthens the player's defense. The strength of the armor is proportional to the strength characteristic of the player.
Extra points, 15.
The main character decided to invest all his points in strength.
The dialogue box says, force, 16.
He thought that he had defeated countless goblins and knew the weaknesses of the orcs, but he knew nothing about other dangers, so he would try out his abilities exactly where he would be almost completely safe.
Li Huayoung went inside the portal.
Kim Bo-on, looking at her, thought that perhaps Li Huayoung had gained something here in his previous life. The main character, a guy with a chainsaw, Kim Bo-on and a girl with a metal pipe came out of the portal.
They walk forward, looking around. A goblin looks at them from around the corners, grinning maliciously.
They turned when they saw him.
The goblin's charge hit them. The goblin bit the main character's arm.
His jaw dropped in surprise.
Li Huayoung looked at him calmly. The blue dialogue box said, armor activated.
He reached out a black hand and grabbed the goblin's head.
He squeezed his hand, crushing the goblin's head with it.
The blue dialogue box says, you changed the future, plus 1 extra point.
Li Huayoung thought that it hadn't even been 5 hours since the game started and his strength was already 16.
The main character opened his hand and the goblin's corpse plopped to the ground.
The girl said in a frightened voice that it was impossible.
The boy gritted his teeth, cursed and said in surprise that he had crushed the goblin's skull with one hand.
Kim Bo-on approached Li Huayoung and asked how. He said that the armor skill was the only one in the world and it was probably because of it that he was considered the strongest player in Korea in his previous life.
The main character asked indifferently, so what?
Kim Bo-on said he needed it more.
He took the chainsaw out of the guy's hand and threw it at Li Huayoung.
He frowned in surprise.
Using his armor, he blocked the blow with his hand.
The chainsaw blade sparkled as it rested against the protagonist's black arm. Chuckling horribly, he thought that even if he hadn't regressed, it shouldn't be like this. He decided it was his turn and held up a black hand. He grabbed the chainsaw blade in his hand and squeezed the chainsaw bent in his hand. Li Huayoung threw the chainsaw from Kim Bo-on's hand to the floor. The main character grabbed him by the neck.
There was a blue dialogue box above Kim Bo-on's head that said, Level 3.
Li Huayoung squeezed his throat and he was trying to say something.
The main character looked at him with a dead look and thought, what a pity.
He thought about how greed breeds destruction.
The war teaches this and he even has a scar that now serves as a reminder. He guessed that they thought that since they had regressed to the hardware store and he hadn't yet managed to get all the skills he had in his previous life, they would be able to pick them up. Holding Kim Bo-on by the neck above the ground, the protagonist turned to the others and asked if there were any more applicants. They opened their mouths in fright.
He told them to leave. Li Huayoung continued to squeeze Kim Bo-on's neck.
There was a crunch and he dropped it to the ground. He thought about how letting go of his enemies during the war wasn't a thank you, but a rain of bullets.
And so it has always been.
Li Huayoung said that now that it started, the law doesn't mean anything. He thought that he knew very well that letting his emotions get in the way of dealing with those who had threatened his life at least once was unacceptable. He looked at the boy and girl and gave them a threatening look and told them to get out of his sight if they valued their lives. Li Huayoung thought about how cruel this game is because the inventory window appears above the deceased player to make it easier to pick up their items.
A blue inventory dialog box appeared above Kim Bo-on's body. After clicking a button on the dialog box, Li Huayoung said it was convenient. The blue dialog box says, Goblin Champion Necklace, Strength plus 3, Agility plus 3. In his hand was a necklace with a blue glowing stone. After putting it around his neck, he said that he now owned it. The necklace turned red.
The dialog box says, you changed the future, plus 1 extra point. He thought that 3 points of strength and agility was quite a lot. It gets 3 bonus points when a level is obtained, which means this necklace is equivalent to 2 levels. He thought that even though the more he leveled up, the less effect it would have, it was quite significant in the early stages.
The guy crouched down next to Kim Bo-on's body and asked why he was wearing it. He said it was kind of tasteless. The main character picked up a chainsaw from the floor, walking towards the orc.
He shoved the chainsaw into the orc's mouth. Swinging it up, he sliced the orc's head in half.
Li Huayoung said that he doesn't feel the difference.
He thought that 3 points of strength to his 15 wasn't a small increase, but he still didn't feel any different. The blue dialog box says, all monsters in the dungeon have been killed.
The dungeon will soon be destroyed. Exit time, 3 minutes.
You can only destroy the gate by killing all the monsters inside. When all the monsters die, the spatial rift disappears without a trace. This is exactly what Lee Wai-young was talking about when he said that the laws no longer make sense. Even regressed players don't know what happens to those who remain in the rift after the gate disappears. No one has yet returned from them to tell because their bodies are disappearing along with the gate. The main character goes to the portal, his jacket is torn in front. He thought that was why they gave him time to go out. He glanced at Kim Bo-won, who was lying motionless on the floor. He noticed a boy standing in front of him. Lee Wai-young realized that it was a boy who wanted to buy a wrench. He asked him if he wanted to share the fate of Kim Bo-won. The boy replied that he wanted to stay with him. The main character refused him and urged him to leave. The boy begged him to let him follow him. Lee Wai-young frowned, grabbing him by the shoulders and telling him to stop. The main character clicked on a dialog box with a status window. The blue dialog box says, Strength, 25 plus 3. He thought that with the boost from the Goblin Champion necklace, his type strength was 28. He now had more power than a level 9 player who had invested all the points in it. When he noticed the boy crying, he said he told him to stop. The boy was crying, clutching his t-shirt. Pressing a hand to his chest, he told him that they had regressed 10 years into the past. Lee Wai-young told him not to whine and be a man. Clenching his fists in front of him, the boy shouted that even in 10 years his life will not change and he wants to be a hero for once, so he asks him about it. He shouted that he wanted to be the hero's assistant. Grinning, Lee Wai-young said that he was a funny guy. He thought that his name was Kim Min-soo and the only reason he was interested in him was because he knew the future 10 years in advance. Kim Min-soo clenched his fists and said that he wanted his life to mean something and asked him to help with it. He said he wouldn't disgrace his name. When Kim Min-soo regressed, he hoped to change his life for the better. Unfortunately for him, it wasn't just him who regressed, which means that nothing can be changed. This is an ordinary player who kills monsters and clears small dungeons for 10 years. It seems to him that being a psychic of the main character of Korea will be better. With a grin, Lee Wai-young thought that he felt like he wasn't far off the mark and that his head was working. They exit the portal. The main character asks that he does not want to just be a henchman. Kim Min-soo replied with a smile that when he became the world's top man, he would be his right-hand man. He said that he is number one and he commands everything. Lee Wai-young said that he needed to see if it would be of any use. He asked him to name 10 people he would meet in the future, their names, faces, and levels. He added that it doesn't matter to him whether they are friends or enemies and he needs this information. Kim Min-soo said he understood. The main character with a gloomy look told him not to even think about deceiving him and that his age would not stop him. He told him to call him when he was done. They exchanged phone numbers. Kim Min-soo ran out of the building happily. Lee Wai-young smiled and said that he was really funny. 3 days have passed since the regression of all players. At first, the players hid the fact of regression. There are many reasons. For example, they could easily be considered crazy. Just the appearance of monsters is not enough to make people believe in time travel as well. Also, the regressors wanted to live a different life than the last one. Therefore, they did not want to share information about the future. Monsters are raging in the city. Regressors felt that regression was a great chance to change their lives as the main character of the novel would have done. However, the fact that everyone regressed made becoming the main character a pipe dream. News and social networks are full of information about the game. The headlines read, Regressors, people from the future. The stock market is on edge. Don't believe scammers who pretend to be regressors. Who will be elected president in 2024? About the last dungeon in 2030, the sports betting industry is temporarily shutting down. Chief Executive Officer of one of the companies, too many people know the results of the game. This isn't profitable for us. The blue dialog box says, you change the future. Plus 1 extra point, the main character is sitting on the couch and watching TV. The man on the TV introduced himself as Yoon Moon-young. He said that there was a catastrophe of unprecedented proportions, the whole world turned into a game, and with its onset, all players regressed. He said that they will discuss it today and with them today is Lee Dong-guk, director of the Asia-Pacific Players Association. He greeted him. Lee Dong-guk greeted him back. The host said that many players are now in turmoil and those who have not awakened as a player are particularly susceptible to this feeling. He asked if he could explain to them what the phenomenon was. Lee Dong-guk responded that for ordinary people who didn't become players, this situation became much better with the fact of regression. He said that just because the players protecting them from the monsters had regressed, it meant that they would be able to gain strength much faster. He said that with the protection of players, their lives will not change much and he believes there is absolutely nothing to worry about. He added that the only problem may be players demanding money for information about the future and otherwise there is nothing that needs to be mentioned. The host said that, in other words, the ability of players to become stronger is a plus for humanity. He asked why this was happening, why the players were regressing, and what happened in the last dungeon. Lee Wai-young noticed the mention of the last dungeon. Lee Dong-guk replied that many people wonder if the players regressed because of what happened in the last dungeon and this question is no doubt justified. He added that the regression occurred 3 hours after 21 of the chosen players from all over the world entered the dungeon. The main character said that it turns out that after 10 years, the last dungeon appears in 3 hours after 21 people enter it, all players regressed. The host said that the last dungeon might be the end of this game. He asked me what had happened there. We're calling that Lee Dong-guk, director of the Asia-Pacific Players Association, is with them today. He said that they will continue after the commercial break. Lee Wai-young cursed. Grinning, he asked about the strongest player. Listening to their conversation, he finally understood why the players in the construction shop called him the childish word hero. He was looking out the window. The blue dialogue box says, "You changed the future." Plus 1 extra point, Lee Wai-young noticed that he was given a point for the film. He thought that perhaps in his previous life, he hadn't even bothered to prepare the windows for winter. Lee Wai-young thought that almost everything he did here gave him extra points and it seemed like he hadn't returned home at this time in his previous life. He got 1 point each for drinking water and sitting on the couch. He'll think he doesn't have time to catch his breath. The blue dialogue box says, extra points, 37. He thought that the number of points accumulated could not but please. He asked how he was able to become the strongest player in Korea and enter the last dungeon without this unbalanced skill. Grinning, he thought that the reason he was interested was not just curiosity but anticipation. As a child, Lee Wai-young learned that the weak always give up to the strong. Thanks to this, he also realized that he needed to become the strongest one. He remembered 2 guys grabbing him by the collar in the alley. The main character chose money as the source of power and later sold his life to countless wars to increase his value. Even in a world where the concept of a better person didn't exist, he wanted to be one. He thought that now there was such a title after all. The TV reporter was happily counting down from 5 to 1. He happily pointed his finger at 3 statues and said that they were statues of players Lee Wai-young, Park Moo-sun, and Choi Chul-sundae. He explained that they entered the last dungeon as representatives of Korea. The crowd cheered loudly. Lee Wai-young was petrified in surprise. When he saw his statue on the TV screen, he said it was him. As he gripped the TV screen with his hands, he thought about what those statues had done just 3 days after all the players regressed and apparently, in his previous life, he really was an incredible player. Among the mercenaries, it was the most expensive, but that didn't mean anything, because a consumable is still a consumable. It didn't bother him, because he was only doing it for the money. However, now he sees that a cult is practically being built around him. The reporter said that the fact that after the representatives of each state entered the last dungeon, all the other players regressed means that something happened inside. He asked if they should ask the 3 Korean players, Lee Wai-young, Park Moo-sun, and Choi Chul-sun, about what happened there. He said they were there, so they should know. Lee Wai-young said that he was curious himself. The voice on the TV said that all 3 of them were now in hiding. The reporter asked if people who should be revered as heroes had disappeared without a trace. The voice said it was just like that. He said that these are the people who entered the last dungeon at the end of the game, in other words, the strongest players in Korea. When they entered the last dungeon, they were filled to the brim with unique items and skills, which means that now that they are back in the present, only they know the location of these unique and legendary items and skills. The host asked if they were hiding for their own safety. The man replied that it was true, and other players also want to get these items and skills because their strength corresponds to their rarity. The host said that he had heard that the World Players Association had issued a new decree. The man agreed and said that players who entered the last dungeon in their previous life would be forgiven for all their crimes. The host frowned and asked if they were sure that this decree was necessary. The man replied that players from different countries still need to follow the laws of their respective countries, and this rule was established by the World Players Association, but another provision was added to the law. He said to talk about the reason for this. The main character turned off the TV and said that he understood. He learned 2 interesting things. First, there are a lot of people hunting him. The second is that it is legal for him to beat them until they lose their pulse. He put on a sweatshirt and picked up a black face mask. The blue dialogue box in front of him said that he had changed the future and received an extra point. Wearing a mask over his face and a hood over his head, Lee Wai-young runs down the city street. He thought about how no matter how much he thought about it, he didn't have a single reason to go to Gwanghwamun Square in his previous life, and since he didn't do it in his previous life, just going there would change the future. And, as if to confirm his words, system notifications pop up with each completed step. There are 2 blue dialogue boxes in front of it. One has a status window and the other says, Special Skill, Butterfly Effect, First Level. The blue dialogue boxes say, additional points have been applied to the Dexterity attribute. Dexterity, 55. Lee Wai-young pushed off the ground and exhaled. He thought that the unwritten rules about spending extra points, such as that strength is the best stat for early play, or that those who spend mana quickly should spend it, meant nothing to him, because he was gaining points at a completely different rate from the rest of the players. The main character quickly runs along the street. It occurred to him that the usual rules simply didn't apply to him. Lee Wai-young jumped from the roof of a building. He landed flat on his feet. He looked ahead, his eyes glowing red. Lee Wai-young stands in the square amid a crowd of people. He looked at his statue, which says, Shadow of Death, Lee Wai-young. Adjusting the brim of his cap, he said he couldn't believe it. If being chosen to enter the last dungeon is so significant, as they said on TV, the main character assumed that he would be recognized, so he had to prepare. He doesn't want to attract too much attention, and all he needs right now is information about his future. When he was a mercenary, he kept appearing on TV to increase his value, but that's beside the point now. He thought that everyone was thinking the same thing. Regressed players will not hide their desires from him. They want to get information from him, and they think he has it. However, this is not the case because it has not regressed. They don't know that, and they don't know something else. He had a new power that he didn't have in his previous life. Kim Bo-on was one of them. In any case, Lee Wai-young was now the target of the greed-blinded players. The main character narrowed his eyes with distaste. The players in the square were armed. Most likely, their goal is simply to attract attention. They could put it away in the inventory. With the title of heroes who will save the world from monsters, players also gained fame. Lee Wai-young thought that if he took off his mask in front of them, this place would become a slaughterhouse, but he needed other players. He had seen these 3 statues being worshipped on the TV broadcast. He thought that to these people, he was something like a deity. They wouldn't do it if they didn't know anything about him, no matter how exaggerated the stories are, but unlike the broadcast, he doesn't see them here. The statue of a man with a cloak draped over his shoulders reads, We are here to save humanity. Thank you for all your support. The King of Poisons, Choi Chul Sunday. On the statue of a guy leaning his hands on his sword, it says, We'll go in there and end this game once and for all. The Emperor of the Sword, Park Mu-sung. The statue of Lee Wai-young had 2 horizontal lines and 1 vertical line, meaning the middle finger, and was written, Shadow of Death, Lee Wai-young. Folding his arms across his chest, Lee Wai-young shook his head at the words about the Shadow of Death. He saw the guy with the mace blow his statue's head off. The blue dialogue box said, You changed the future, plus 1 extra point. The guy wearing a white jacket grinned viciously. It landed in front of the protagonist, and the statue's head fell to the ground. He put the weapon away in the dialogue box. Lee Wai-young looked at him calmly. The guy grinned. They stand facing each other in a cloud of dust. Turning around, the guy started running away from him. Lee Wai-young thought that now that his agility was more than 50 points, controlling his speed wasn't so easy. The blue dialogue box says, You changed the future, plus 1 extra point. He ran after the guy. They run through the streets. Lee Wai-young grabbed the boy's neck. He held it up off the ground and asked if he knew it. With a sinister smile, the main character said that this means that he knows where he started running off to. The boy tried to draw his weapon, but Lee Wai-young grabbed his arm and told him not to even think about it. He snatched the mace out of his hands, thanking him and saying that he would need it. The blue dialogue box says, You changed the future, plus 1 extra point. The blue dialogue box says, Mace of the Orc Champion. Chance to stun the enemy 25%, plus 30 damage, plus 10 strength. Lee Wai-young asked who he works for. He thought that he was definitely from the guild, because it was impossible to get a rare weapon while being a loner and even in 5 days. He squeezed his neck and asked if he had watched the interview. He recalled that it was an interview with the director of the World Players Association and asked if he remembered what he said. He said that if he tried any tricks, he wouldn't even have a bloodstain left. The guy laughed nervously and demanded to let him go. Lee Wai-young said with a grim face that he had 10 seconds. He asked who he was and where he came from. Startled, the boy replied that he was Kim Chang-bai from the General Guild. Lee Wai-young told him to continue. After that, Kim Chang-bai finally gave up. The main character asked about Lee Wai-young's project. He thought that according to him, Lee Wai-young's project was the name of the General Guild's operation, the essence of which was to take over all the skills and items that he had collected in his previous life. He asked what would come first and said that if he didn't want to feed himself worms, he'd better talk. Kim Chang-bai said in a frightened voice that it was stealth. He apologized and asked me not to kill him. He said it would be in 3 days at the gate to the werewolf dungeon. Lee Wai-young told him to tell me more. The guy said that the werewolf dungeon where Lee Wai-young obtained the rare stealth skill would be opened in 3 days. He asked how they knew all this. Kim Chang-bai thought about why he was asking something that he knew about. He said he didn't know where they got this information from, but it was reliable. He shouted that he knew because it was his skill. Lee Wai-young asked how they were going to steal all of his skills. Kim Chang-bai said that 3 days before the dungeon opens, about 100 players will be on full alert and they are confident that he will come for the skill that he had in the past. The main character thought that it would not be easy to face 100 regressed players. He frowned, thinking. The dialogue box says, "You changed the future." Plus 1 extra point, Kim Min-soo soon arrived. He said Kim Chang-bai was lying and asked if he could just kill him. Lee Wai-young said that they would first listen to what he collected and then make a decision. Kim Min-soo said that the nobodies from the General Guild are targeting the stealth skill. With a smile, the protagonist turned to Kim Chang-bai and said that one of them was lying. The blue dialogue box says, "You changed the future." Plus 1 extra point. He thought that Kim Chang-bai and Kim Min-soo were talking about the same thing and he could only listen and compare their information. Kim Chang-bai shouted that the werewolf dungeon would open tomorrow. The blue dialogue box says, "You changed the future." Plus 1 extra point. Lee Wai-young smiled and asked him what that meant. Pointing his finger at Kim Min-soo, Kim Chang-bai said that he was lying. He asked if he was ill. Kim Chang-bai accused him of trying to deceive everyone. The main character walked up to them and held out his black hands. He grabbed them by the neck, lifting them off the ground, and told them to prove their case one by one. Kim Min-soo took out his phone from his pocket and showed it to Lee Wai-young. The phone screen says, "Still no news about Lee Wai-young. Will he show up at the werewolf dungeon on January 7th? The main character said that the 7th of January is tomorrow. Kim Min-soo nodded in satisfaction. Looking at his phone, Kim Min-soo said that the werewolf dungeon appeared in the first days of the game, and due to the characteristics of werewolves, it was quite difficult for beginners to kill them. He said that their attack speed is many times faster than that of goblins and orcs and they gather in packs. He showed the screen of Lee Wai-young's phone and said that because of this, no one was able to win at the beginning of the game and the dungeon was eventually forgotten, and as a result, werewolves came out of it. Kim Min-soo said that this is why the werewolf dungeon is quite famous among players and these monsters from the nearest cities did not leave a stone unturned. Lee Wai-young asked about the fact that everyone knows where it is. Dungeons and gates weren't a problem for the unawakened. At the beginning of the game, they attracted a lot of attention due to the absurd unreality of what was happening. However, over time, the novelty was replaced by routine. Every time the gate opened, the unawakened ones either received an evacuation message or an army quickly moved in and secured the area around the gate. Above the ground, a red portal glowed, surrounded by police officers who asked to stay away from here. The only thing that ordinary people needed to do was to stay out of the way. When the players woke up and got used to the game, life went back to normal. However, the gate to the werewolf dungeon was on a different level. Monsters ran out of them and mercilessly destroyed the nearest cities when the game was just beginning. Now everyone hopes that a strong player will appear who can deal with the werewolves, so the location of the gate and the fact that there are werewolves inside it is known to ordinary people. With a frown, Kim Min-soo shouted that this dungeon was destroyed by Lee Wai-young in his previous life. The main character asked Kim Chang-bai if he was right. The blue dialogue box said, "You changed the future, plus 1 extra point." He said he would ask him one last question. Frowning, Lee Wai-young asked who gave him the order to smash his statue. Kim Chang-bai cursed and stuck his hand into the blue dialogue box. The main character clenched his hand and there was a crunch. The blue dialogue box says, "You changed the future, plus 1 extra point." He opened his hands. Kim Chang-bai fell to the ground, dead. Kim Min-soo gave him a startled look. Lee Wai-young noticed the dialogue box and said that it meant that he didn't kill him in his previous life. A werewolf dungeon opens on January 7th, which is tomorrow. In the past, no one could destroy it when it first opened. In other words, no player had the strength to do so. However, now that everyone has regressed, the situation is different. Folding his arms across his chest, Lee Wai-young speculated that a substance might kill werewolves, just as rat poison kills rats. He said that he needed to learn more about this dungeon. Kim Min-soo asked why he needed information about places he had been to before. He asked if he knew the best about them. The main character raised an eyebrow and said that it was because he didn't regress. He told him to shut up and said the interrogation was over. Kim Min-soo looked at him in surprise. After thinking about it, he said that the most important thing was that it was a level 5 dungeon. He asked what his level was and said that if it was less than 5th, then he wouldn't be able to enter. Lee Wai-young spread his hands in surprise. Gritting his teeth, he asked about the fact that he needed to be level 5. Squinting, he thought that the level didn't mean much to him. The status window says Lee Wai-young level 2, stamina 1, strength 28, mana 1, agility 55, concentration 1, bonus points 162, achievements brave beginner, skills, first level butterfly effect, first level armor. Lee Wai-young thought that he had used a total of 80 points and including the ones in reserve, that made a total of 242 points. Each level is awarded 3 points and if you divide 242 by 3, you get about 80. The main character felt that his stats were now at the level of a level 80 player. Kim Min-soo spread his hands and said that even at his current level, it would be difficult for him to kill werewolves. He added that other players won't just stand by and watch either. With a frown, Lee Wai-young said that the problem was the level. He thought that even with such stats, he couldn't enter the dungeon because his actual level was lower than that of the werewolves. He told Kim Min-soo to show him where he could level up. Raising his hand, he replied that only the orc and goblin gates were open now and new gates would open over time, just like the werewolf gate tomorrow. He added that only 4 days have passed since the start of the game. The main character asked about goblins and orcs. Kim Min-soo said that monsters like goblins and orcs are usually not interesting to him. Raising his eyebrows, Lee Wai-young said that they were cute. The blue dialogue box says, additional points have been applied to the strength attribute. Strength 190. The main character clenched a black hand wrapped in a blue aura. The blue dialogue box says, armor, first level, enhances and strengthens the player's body. The strength of the armor is proportional to the strength characteristic of the player. Wrapped in a blue aura, he asked Kim Min-soo if anyone in his past life had broken through his armor. Spreading his hands, he said that he didn't know because they didn't always go together. He said that he could definitely tell that the title on his statue, Shadow of Death, was given because of the armor. Lee Wai-young said it was kind of childish. Across from them were a few goblins who were smiling maliciously. By increasing the strength stat, Lee Wai-young not only increased his physical strength but also the strength of his armor. He leaped forward, breaking the floor beneath him. Kim Min-soo covered his face with his hands. The blue dialogue box says, Dexterity, 55. The main character jumped on the goblins, swinging a black hand. He crushed the goblin's head to the ground with his hand. The blue dialogue box says, you changed the future, plus 1 extra point. The main character thought that with his strength and agility, they didn't stand a chance. He punched the other goblin in the face with a calm face. The blue dialogue box says, you changed the future, plus 1 extra point. Leaning his foot on a dead goblin, Lee Wai-young said that he recently saw something on the internet. He asked what a skill stone was. He added that if he swallowed one, they would give him a skill. Kim Min-soo pondered and thought about how he didn't know what even non-players knew. He asked if he really hadn't regressed, unlike them. He thought that he was too strong for a non-regressor. Lee Wai-young irritably shouted at him to just answer the question. Kim Min-soo was scared. He said that the skill stone is literally a stone that has a skill in it and it is located near the monster's heart. He said that the skill stones are about half the size of a human fist and the color of their glow indicates what class the skill is inside, white normal, purple rare, yellow unique, red legendary. Kim Min-soo said that stealth, which is rumored to be in the werewolf dungeon, is a rare skill and its gem will glow purple. Lee Wai-young raised an eyebrow and asked what the skill class meant. Kim Min-soo replied that, in short, different classes show how many copies of each skill exist and rare and lower skills have more copies. He explained that, for example, there are several stealth stones in the world, so even if you get it in the werewolf dungeon, someone in the world will also have one. The blue dialogue box says, Stealth Skill Gem. The main character asked if this means that the stones of the legendary and unique classes are one at a time. Kim Min-soo held up his index finger and smiled, saying that it was true and skills also have levels. He explained that the higher the level, the stronger the skill and various effects can be added to them.
Lee Wai-young asked what about the unique skills?
Kim Min-soo's eyes widened in surprise. He asked what unique skills were. The main character asked if he knew about the unique skills. Lee Wai-young looked at the blue dialogue box that said, Butterfly Effect, First Level. As the only one who has not regressed, you will earn extra points for each action you take that changes the future. Kim Min-soo scratched his head in confusion.
The main character indifferently told him that it didn't matter. Lee Wai-young walks down the street.
He and Kim Min-soo hid around the corner of the building. Above the main character's head is written, Lee Wai-young, Level 5. Kim Min-soo asked what their plan was. Pointing his finger at the square, Lee Wai-young said that he would do everything himself. He told him to go there and find out what they were going to do and tell him if there was anything interesting. Kim Min-soo nodded with glowing eyes. The main character thought that he directly exuded loyalty. He thought that the gate of the werewolf dungeon would soon appear here, and seeing 100 players from the general guild waiting for Lee Wai-young to appear, he realized that Kim Chang-bai wasn't lying about everything.
The first point of Lee Wai-young's plan is to enter the gate as soon as it appears.
A limited number of players can enter the dungeon and the number for each is different. According to Kim Min-soo, only 5 people can enter the werewolf dungeon. He thought that he needed to enter before the 5-player limit was exhausted, and if it didn't work out, then those people would kill the werewolves and get the stone.
Lee Wai-young looked at the watch on his wrist and said that there were 7 minutes left.
A voice in the crowd shouted that this was where Lee Wai-young obtained the rare stealth skill in his previous life. The blonde-haired guy raised his fist and shouted that the gate would open in 5 minutes and that today would be the day when the general guild would take the lead. He shouted that they were using Lee Wai-young's skill to leave an even bigger mark on history than he did. The crowd cheered. He shouted that Lee Wai-young hadn't shown up yet and told them not to let their guard down because they didn't know when he was coming. Grinning, he thought that he was already here.
On the dialogue box in front of him was written, the gate will appear in 30 seconds. Werewolf Dungeon, Level 5. There are a maximum of 25 werewolves. Number of players, 5.
Dungeon difficulty, a crowd of people with dialogue boxes in front of them counted from 10 to 1. When they counted, a huge red gate appeared in front of them.
The guy urged them to go ahead and make history.
The guy waved to his friend and said that he would be back soon. The guy in the black shirt said that these werewolves were nothing to them, the regressors. The yellow-haired guy shouted at him not to die in the dungeon. They turned around and saw Lee Wai-young running towards the gate. When they recognized him, they took up arms and attacked him. Someone shouted that Lee Wai-young was here and ordered him to contact the headquarters. The main character thought that only 5 days had passed since the regression of all players, and if you think logically, a person with agility above 50 could not appear, but he does not care about logic. Lee Wai-young quickly ran past the armed men. One person in the crowd asked why he was so fast. Another exclaimed that such dexterity simply could not exist. Another voice urged them to run after him and not stand still. The main character ran into the portal, and in front of the guy who was chasing him, a red dialogue box appeared on which it was written, the limit of players is exhausted.
You can't log in.
Kim Min-soo opened his mouth in surprise.
Lee Wai-young and a few people are standing in the night forest.
They look at the main character in fright, and someone said his name. He thought that having them all regressed was quite convenient because they knew who he was and he didn't even have to explain anything. Lee Wai-young smiled calmly and said, exactly. Blue dialogue boxes appeared next to the guys, and the guy with blue hair told everyone to be ready. They stuck their hands into the blue dialogue boxes. They ran to attack the main character while swinging their green whips. The blue dialogue box says, Goblin Chieftain's Whip, low damage, allows the wearer to control goblins, damage, +1. Lee Wai-young used the armor skill and his arms and neck turned black, the whips wrapped around his arms and neck. The blue dialogue box says, you change the future, +1 extra point. They pulled on the whips, spreading the protagonist's arms in different directions. The guy with the blue hair was looking at the blue dialogue box. He took out the net. Lee Wai-young rolled his eyes in surprise and thought that they immediately realized that they were no match for him, so they decided to tie him up because their punches wouldn't have any effect. Grinning, he noted that this was a good plan and thought that they were trying very nicely.
Lee Wai-young knelt down next to the bound guys wrapped in the net.
He said with a grin that it was a good try and it was a pity that it didn't work out.
He turned as the snarling wolf approached. Several evil black wolves approached him. Lee Wai-young asked why they were so angry. The wolf's eyes glowed red and saliva was coming out of its mouth.
The main character asked if this was normal for them. He asked the guys if they would like to be a snack for them. They pleaded with him, saying what they didn't want and just did as they were told. With a serious face, he asked them who. The wolves growled angrily. They launched an attack on Lee Wai-young. The blue-haired guy said in a frightened voice that Lee Wai-young was trapped. The guy in the black shirt said the werewolves had caught him. The guy with the blue hair sighed and said that it looked like they were going to die like this. The wolves attacked the main character, who was lying on the ground. One of the wolves twitched. Lee Wai-young rose to his feet, holding up a black fist. The wolves scattered. The blue dialogue box says, "You changed the future, plus 1 extra point." The main character exhaled. The 2 blue dialogue boxes say, "You changed the future, plus 1 extra point." The guys ask in surprise how this is possible. Lee Wai-young said that he had to remember it once, and it seems that this also applies to them. He stood with a bloody black hand, surrounded by wolves. A bloodied wolf lay on the ground. Like wolves, dogs have elongated muzzles. Dogs and wolves are very similar. If you grab a dog by the muzzle and close its jaw, it will think that you are stronger. Lee Wai-young found out about this a few years ago on a mission to track down smugglers. After being bitten by a guard dog, he grabbed its muzzle with one hand and looked it straight in the eye. He never tried to attack him again. Lee Wai-young thought that he had spared the dog back then, but they weren't animals, they were monsters. The wolf leapt at him, snarling and snarling. The main character squeezed the wolf's mouth with his hands and decided to put more strength into the grip and turn their muzzles into a mess. He crushed the wolf's face with his hands, spilling blood. The boys looked at him in shock, amazed at his strength. Lee Wai-young thought that unlike goblins and orcs, werewolves had strong bones. He punched the wolf in the face. They thought that since they had regressed, they knew exactly the difference in physical strength between a level 2 orc and a level 5 werewolf, and Lee Wai-young's strength was beyond the limit. Several wolves are looking at the main character surrounded by dead wolves. The guy in the black shirt asked why he didn't kill everyone. The main character calmly replied that he didn't need the gate to disappear just yet. When all the monsters die, the dungeon collapses and the gate disappears. Lee Wai-young is going to get out of this dungeon as soon as he finds the werewolf with the skill stone, because the general guild players are waiting for him outside. He remembered the guy who commanded the rest of the crowd. If the gate disappeared, they would know that he had killed all the werewolves and taken the skill stone, and they would definitely want to turn Korea upside down to find it. To avoid this trouble, Lee Wai-young decided not to kill all the werewolves, but to quietly slip through the gate. 2 wolves with bloody mouths growl angrily. 3 wolves rushed to attack the main character. He looked at them with a calm face and said that it wouldn't be enough. It disappeared in front of their eyes and was behind them, hitting the 3 wolves. Whimpering, they fell to the ground. Lee Wai-young walked up to the terrified guys and addressed them. After the game began, rifts in space and time opened up all over the earth, and monsters rained down from these rifts, causing irreparable damage to civilization. Everyone knew that this was the end of humanity. To deal with this destructive force, a game system was introduced. In order to stop the apocalypse, you need to kill all the monsters in all the dungeons. Apart from a small group of fanatics, there are almost no religious people left. A man in a black hoodie shouts that they accept the will of the Lord and realize the mistakes of humanity and asks them to stop this game. People in green robes, hands folded, repeat after him. They shout that they believe the goblins are little messengers of God. Lee Wai-young thought that it was impossible for God or Buddha to send monsters that were only seen in games before. And while people didn't know what to believe, a new faith emerged in the form of guilds. The crowd cheers on the men with swords who got out of the car. Someone is shouting that the common guild is their only savior in this world. Lee Wai-young thought that he was right when he said the word faith. In addition to fans, they also have parishioners. This way, there was nothing stopping the guilds from getting bigger and bigger. They were fighting among themselves for possession of the dungeons. What fell from the monsters could be used as a source of energy and even make weapons from it, which could help in further clearing the dungeons. In addition, skill stones from dungeons can be sold to players for a lot of money. In other words, owning a dungeon brings huge profits. And in addition to the material benefits, closing these gates, which are capable of enormous destruction, brings a lot of public approval. Lee Wai-young thought that the guild was both a business and a religion. He asked the guys who was in charge. The guy lying on the ground said in a frightened voice that it was Choi Chul-sung. The guy said that their main character is Choi Chul-sundae. The main character repeated his name in surprise. He thought he knew the name and saw it on the statue next to his own. He asked if he said to come for stealth. The dark-haired guy said in a startled voice that they were just following his instructions. The red-haired guy frowned and asked why he had just told him everything so easily. He called him a traitor. Lee Young paused for a moment, then sat down next to the red-haired guy and put his hand on his shoulder. His hand turned black, and he squeezed his shoulder hard, making it crack. The boy screamed in pain. The dialogue box says, "You changed the future and got 1 extra point." With a sinister grin, his eyes glowing red, he said that he didn't come here to joke around. Rising to his feet, Lee Young repeated Choi Chul-sung's name thoughtfully. He thought that he was the head of the General Guild. He asked if he was one of the people who went with him to the last dungeon. The 3 statues in Gwanghwamun Square were modeled after the 3 players chosen by the Korean representatives to enter the final dungeon. He is an associate who went to close the dungeon with the main character. The main character remembered the report about the erection of their statues and thought that he could not call him a colleague because he had never met him. He thought about the fact that the one he had fought hand in hand with was now trying to steal his skills. Lee Young said thoughtfully that he could understand it because that's human nature. He thought that he was not even offended by this, and he knew that the desire for personal gain is the engine of progress. He calmly opened one eye. Several black wolves appeared in front of the protagonist, and he thought that after a few werewolves died, new ones appeared. Lee Young thought that the number of monsters in a dungeon is always the same, and since there are only 25 werewolves in this dungeon, new ones will appear at regular intervals to fill up the number. He figured they'd arrived on time and he wouldn't even have to get his hands dirty. Clutching the net in his hand, he said that he hoped Choi Chul soon would forgive him for killing his men. The dark-haired boy made a frightened plea to him. The main character threw a net with guys towards the running werewolves. A blonde-haired guy wearing a red sweatshirt came out of the portal with a grin. He and the other 2 guys who came out with him exclaimed in surprise when they noticed the bloody head of their comrade on the floor. Lee Young thought that the limit of players in this dungeon was 5, and when those 4 died, the gate opened again, allowing new ones to enter. The main character, standing with bloodied hands, surrounded by dead werewolves, said that he had completely forgotten. On the dialogue box next to him, it said that he had 93 extra points. 3 guys and a girl were standing near the portal, looking at it in surprise. They charged, swinging their green whips. Soon they were tied up and covered in a net, just like the guys before them. The main character, folding his arms on his chest, asked which of the werewolves had the stone. The guy with the blonde hair said he was the one with the white eyebrows. Lee Young calmly said great. He thought that these players were different from the previous ones, and they didn't even think twice before answering. Walking on the ground littered with the bodies of humans and werewolves, he assumed that rolling on the ground in pain werewolves with broken faces and other limbs and the bodies of their comrades showed how to deal with him. He thought about the white eyebrows and sat down on the ground next to the trembling white-browed werewolf. Lee Young squeezed his head with his hand and it broke with a crunch, spattering blood. Watching the main character tear apart the werewolf's body with his hands, the people from the General Guild shivered in fright. Putting his hand inside the werewolf's body, he said with a disgusted look on his face that it was disgusting. The main character remembered Kim Min-soo and thought that it would be necessary to make a professional butcher out of him so as not to do it himself. He took out a purple stone from the werewolf's body. The dialogue box says, Stealth, first level, makes the player's body transparent. The duration of the effect is proportional to the player's monostat. The green-shirt guy sighed and said that it was a skill that the hero who entered the last dungeon used. The girl said that she could have sold it for a lot of money or made herself stronger as a player, but in the end it returned to its original owner. Lee Young thought that if he sold it, he would have plenty of money, but he would still consume it. From the beginning of the game, the greatest power is not money, but your own power, and the most important thing is to get it. Becoming the strongest is the main character's goal. He recalled how he was bullied in the orphanage and how he stood on the battlefield while working as a mercenary. He thought that he had spent his entire life in an orphanage and on the battlefield, where there was no glimmer of hope. Looking at the purple stone in his hand, he thought that he wanted to have power that was many times greater than money, and now they were living in a world where it was possible. He thought he wanted a world like this. Holding the stone close to his mouth, Lee Young said that he would rewrite history. The dialogue box says, You changed the future and got 1 extra point. The blue dialogue box says, The stealth skill is blocked and cannot be used, unlocks at the 10th level. The main character frowned in surprise. He thought that he was now level 6 and he needed to raise 4 more levels to use stealth. He said irritably that it was a nuisance. The blonde-haired guy asked what was wrong. Lee Young replied that no matter how strong he was, this useless number didn't allow him to enjoy his strength. He thought that he needed to level up again. Looking at the dialogue box that said he had 102 extra points, he thought he would put it all into strength. The dialogue box says, strength 289 plus 3. He thought that he should use stealth when leaving the dungeon, because there are 100 not-so-friendly guys waiting for him there who really want to get this skill. Lee Young thought that 100 players from the General Guild were waiting for him to appear. He thought that even with his incredible strength, it would be difficult to defeat 100 players, and even if there was only one monster left in the dungeon, it would continue to summon them. The people from the guild looked at the broken-limbed werewolves falling to the ground in fright. The main character thought that since the dungeon would fall apart when he killed the last monster, he would just let it live and kill the rest. He thought that 300 units of power was a real tragedy for the poor level 5 werewolves. He punched the werewolf in the face. Lee Young thought that just by moving his finger, he could break all their bones, so he had to be more careful. He thought that a 50-point dexterity might also help speed things up. He killed 3 werewolves with 3 quick strikes. The blue dialogue boxes say, level up, plus 3 extra points. Lee Young, level 10. The stealth skill is unlocked. You changed the future and got 1 extra point. The main character Yun, surrounded by dead werewolves. He used the stealth skill and saw that his hand had become transparent. He raised 1 eyebrow. Lee Young spread his hands and asked how he could use this skill if it was so weak. The blonde-haired guy replied that as the skill level increased, his clothes would also be able to become transparent. The main character asked about the skill level. The guy explained that the higher the skill level, the more powerful it is, and the higher the skill class, the stronger it becomes when you level up. He said that stealth is a rare skill, so as you level up, it becomes incredibly strong. The main character thought about the fact that the skills actually had a level next to the name. He recalled the descriptions of his skills. Placing his hands on his waist, he asked if his clothes would become transparent when stealth reached the 2nd level. A guy with blonde hair, a guy in a green shirt, and a girl with a smile answered that it was true. Lee Young took off his clothes. He used the stealth skill, and the people from the guild noticed in fright that he had disappeared. He thought that these players had come here for the stealth that he had obtained in his previous life, and if they could, they would gladly take his life as well. He didn't see any reason to let them live, he thought. The werewolves surrounded the guild members tied up under the net. The blonde-haired boy begged for mercy. The guy in the green jacket shouted that they had told him everything they knew. Lee Young told them to shut up. The gate to the dungeon opened with a bang. People in the crowd exclaimed that the gate was open again. A man in the crowd asked if someone had died again. Another person asked who would enter next. The naked invisible Lee Young walked out of the portal. As he walked past the crowd, he noticed that it was a big sight. He noticed Kim Min-soo in the crowd. He put his hand on his shoulder and told him that he needed to level up. Kim Min-soo let out a startled cry. Glancing at the main character, he exclaimed that he used stealth. Lee Young put a finger to his lips and motioned for him to be quiet. He asked if he saw a taxi nearby. Pointing his finger at him, he told him to go to him. Kim Min-soo nodded, frowning. The news article says, Lee Young has appeared. He went back for the skills he had in his previous life. 8 members of the General Guild are killed by werewolves. Leon's shocking hunting method. The skulls of the werewolves are shattered. Will it be unstoppable again? All about Lee Young. The werewolf dungeon was destroyed just 5 days after the game started. Leaning his face on his hand, Lee Young stared at his phone with a bored look. Kim Min-soo approached him and told him to look at his phone screen. On the phone screen, there was a video from the news release. The person said that many people were curious about Lee Young's appearance in the werewolf dungeon. He asked why this was happening. Another person replied that there are many reasons, but Lee Young's star quality definitely plays a role. The main character asked what it was. Kim Min-soo replied that they were discussing it. The voice in the video asked what he meant by star quality. The bald man offered to take an example of what happened in a previous life. He said that right before entering the last dungeon, Lee Young gave the middle finger to numerous reporters and people really liked it. He said they adore how unflappable he is, being one of the strongest players, and he just does what he wants. Laughing, he suggested that was why people were so interested in him. The girl asked if he meant to say that everyone is watching Lee Young just because of his star quality. The man replied that there could be many reasons, but he thinks so. Lee Young said with a smirk that this guy can speak properly. The girl said that the chairman of the Players Skills and Technology Association wants to speak out. She asked him to speak. A guy with yellow eyes and white hair said hello and introduced himself as Park Young-sik, the chairman of the Players Skills and Technology Association.
He asked if today's topic was Lee Young's future actions and if there was something else he could say. The girl asked if everyone agreed. Everyone else in the studio agreed. She asked him to continue.
Park Young-sik closed his eyes and said that, in fact, as soon as Lee Young showed up at the werewolf dungeon today, the game was already over.
They asked in surprise what he meant by that. Someone told him not to talk nonsense. The main character looked at the screen in surprise. The girl smiled awkwardly and asked him to explain. The bald man frowned and asked him to avoid saying things that might confuse people. The guy with the dark hair asked if he was just saying that because no one needed it anymore. Kim Min-soo told the main character that this is the chairman of the Players Skills and Technology Association, Park Young-sik, and he is a very influential person. He said that anything he says about players or monsters will be documented and a report will be made about it, so everyone is surprised by his words. Kim Min-soo explained that as all players regressed, the importance of the Players Skills and Technology Association plummeted, and they no longer have the monopoly on information that they once had. Lee Young thought about how despite the angry people around him, Park Young-sik remained serious. Park Young-sik said that they, in collaboration with the General Guild, examined the bodies of the werewolves, and they all had the same wounds in the area of the skull, which was crushed from compression. He said that the bones of werewolves are incredibly strong, and according to statistics, their skulls can only be crushed by level 40 players who have spent all their strength points. A guy with dark hair jumped up from his seat and said that a player of Lee Young's level could break the bones of werewolves with good equipment. Park Young-sik replied that the highest level open dungeon at the moment is the level 14 Blue Monkey dungeon, and there are no stronger monsters right now. He said that even if he got something from them, the power of their items wouldn't be enough to shatter the skulls of the werewolves in one hit. He started to pull something out from under the table. Park Young-sik said that he also wants to believe that Lee Young has the tools or equipment that can give him such an opportunity. He said that even though he had studied monsters for more than a dozen years, even he found it difficult to explain their injuries. He laid the werewolf's head on the table. The dark-haired guy asked him what he was doing, startled. The girl screamed, covering her mouth with her hands. Park Young-sik said that the most interesting thing was that Lee Young just poked the werewolves with his finger. He said that he had been studying the dungeons and their inhabitants for more than 10 years, but this was the first time he had ever seen anything like this. He said it was definitely a finger mark about the size of a medium one. A guy with dark hair exclaimed that this was absurd. The bald man pointed at him and shouted that what he had just said would sow confusion in the players' minds. He told him to take responsibility for his crazy statements and give up his post. Lee Young, looking at the phone screen, thought that they all have selfish goals, and those who are trying to challenge Park Young-sik are people who have power. All of these people have high positions in organizations related to players and no less high authority among players. These organizations include the Players Association, the Guild Association, companies that generate energy from dungeon items, and companies that produce items and equipment for players. He thought that if it was true that he had killed the werewolves by flicking his finger on their foreheads, the regressors' morale, dreams, and hopes would be completely destroyed. He thought that it was obvious that the profits of companies working with players and dungeons would also drop many times. Park Young-sik said the game is over. He said that in this lifetime, Lee Young would once again be one of the last dungeon's entrants and complete the game. A guy with dark hair stood up and told the audience not to despair because they still have a chance to enter the stories. The girl asked if there was a connection between the middle finger shown by Lee Young to the reporters before entering the last dungeon and killing the werewolves with the same finger. Lee Young raised an eyebrow and asked what she was talking about and how she became a host with such intelligence. He thought that no matter what he did, his actions were different from his previous life and he ended up getting extra points all the time. The only similarity between his past and present images is that they are both considered strong, and if you do not take this into account, then they are completely different. The main character thought that the most important thing right now was his level. He realized that no matter how high his stats were, they didn't make any sense with a low level. Looking ahead with his eyes glowing red, Lee Young said that he needed to pick it up as quickly as possible. He thought that he almost missed the opportunity to enter the werewolf dungeon, couldn't activate stealth when he got it, and it was all because his level was too low and the fact that he was a level 80th player by stats didn't matter at all. He said that if he gave up, the players would turn on him like wolves for a chance to take what was his. The main character thought that just as dungeons have a level threshold, if their level isn't high enough, they won't be able to enter them, and if they can't enter them, they won't be able to get skills and equipment. He thought the hunt ahead was boring and monotonous. Lee Young snapped the fingers of the black hand and thought that the easiest way to level up now was by killing werewolves.
The main character punched the werewolf and thought that he did not go to the dungeon where he got stealth because there is not one dungeon in the world with this type of monster. He thought that when he first crushed the skull of a werewolf with his bare hands, it was nice, but he was already getting bored. The main character and Kim Min-soo are standing in the forest. Lee Young holds a werewolf in his hand and says that he is bored and will go kill someone else. Kim Min-soo argued that this is the best place right now. Throwing the werewolf to the ground, the protagonist asked which dungeon was next. Kim Min-soo replied that the level 14 Blue Monkey dungeon was also open, so he couldn't enter it with his level. Lee Young asked if there was even a single level 14 player out there right now. He added that only 5 days have passed since the start of the game. Kim Min-soo said that he thinks there are no such people. The main character thought that he thought so because it is physically impossible, even if you hunt day and night without rest. He thought that it also meant that no one could enter that dungeon. He raised his eyebrows. The main character told Kim Min-soo that he could hunt blue monkeys without entering the dungeon. He asked what he meant by that. The main character asked that, since there are no level 14 players now, will the blue monkeys come out of the gate? Kim Min-soo exclaimed in surprise. He said that the Blue Ape dungeon, like the Werewolf dungeon, really appeared too early, and since there were no level 14 players in the previous life at this stage, these monsters then caused a lot of destruction. Lee Young put his hands on his waist and said that it seems that something can't be changed even after the regression. He thought that even if the players regressed and became stronger than in the previous life, they couldn't change the rules of the game. Kim Min-soo said that blue monkeys are unpleasant opponents and they are not only fast but also very smart and can learn during combat. Looking at the dialogue box that says that he has 324 extra points, the main character thought that there really are a lot of them. He said it didn't matter. Lee Young thought that his stock of extra points was equivalent to 108 levels, and now that there were no level 14 players, 108 was an unimaginable number. He thought that this was an unimaginable concept of an unimaginable world. Lee Young and Kim Min-soo entered the red portal. He thought that no matter how strong the monster was, it didn't matter at all. Lee Young thought that even the people who didn't awaken as players and therefore didn't regress knew that the blue monkeys would appear here and that the destruction they would cause would be colossal. So there's not a soul here right now, not even any players, because even with the regression, 6 days isn't enough time to compare in terms of time. He put his hands in the pockets of his trousers and said it was a bit empty. Kim Min-soo pointed the way with a smile. He said that he had seen blue monkeys here, even if only on TV, and they should not be underestimated. He said that perhaps because their level is higher than 10th, they can use ranged attacks and learn from people and imitate them. Hearing the car horn, Kim Min-soo said that it looked like monsters were playing with cars. Lee Young asked about the fact that they were already out of the gate. He asked what he had said about their characteristics and suggested that they were annoying with their speed. Kim Min-soo said that's right. On the dialogue box in front of the main character, it was written that he has 521 additional points. He said to apply extra dexterity points, and a blue aura enveloped him. The dialogue box announced that additional points had been applied to the dexterity attribute. The next dialogue box said agility, 578 plus 3. The main character quickly ran forward. While shielding his hands from the gust of wind, Kim Min-soo exclaimed in surprise. He heard a noise. Kim Min-soo went after the main character, thinking that he was only level 3 and would die from one of their hits and he needed to be more careful. Lee Young was hitting the blue monkeys on the ground, surrounded by dialogue boxes saying that his level had been upgraded. He picked up a few blue monkeys by the tail with a sinister grin. He hit them with his other black hand, sending them flying. Kim Min-soo exclaimed in surprise as he watched the main character easily handle the blue monkeys. The blue monkeys try to climb back into the gate, but they can't. The main character thought that just like players can't enter a dungeon, if the limit is reached, the monsters can't go back. He was grinning at the blue monkeys standing in front of the dungeon portal with the red dialogue box. He thought that even though they were monsters, he could see the fear and terror in their eyes. Lee Young thought that regardless of whether it was a human or a monster, the look of someone desperately trying to survive was always the same. Kim Min-soo asked what was going on and said that it shouldn't be like this. He thought that the blue monkeys were said to be very intelligent, so they were trying to escape, but why were the monsters that destroyed humanity now running away? Lee Young, laughing angrily, surrounded by a dialogue box saying that he had leveled up, ran to the monkeys and asked where they were going. The monkeys opened their mouths in fright. The main character thought that in order for him to enter the dungeons that will continue to appear as the game progresses, he needs to have a high level, and if his level is lower than the level of monsters in the dungeons, he will not be able to enter them, and his life as a player will have to end. He thought that besides not being able to get items and skills, the difference between him and the rest of the players would grow and grow. He opened the status window. The status window read, Level 17. He smiled slightly as he looked at the status window shrouded in a blue aura. Kim Min-soo exclaimed in surprise that he was level 17. He asked him about how it had only been 6 days and he was already level 17. Lee Young was breathing heavily, his hands resting on his knees. He told him to shut up. He thought that he was completely exhausted, and it seems that the stamina unit is not enough support for such abnormal strength and agility, and this was not a problem, because with each level increase, his stamina was restored and only a few monkeys had to be killed, but after the 15th level, more and more had to be killed. The main character added extra points to stamina. The dialogue box says that additional points have been applied to the stamina attribute. Lee Young stood there, wrapped in a blue aura. The dialogue box says, Stamina, 213. He sprinted forward. Angry blue monkeys threw garbage at him. The main character covered himself from flying objects with his black hands. As he got closer, he grabbed the startled monkey by the tail. He started to beat up the other monkeys with a vicious smile. He said that all those who got out were finished. Kim Min-soo expressed surprise. Lee Young dusted off his hands and asked him what had happened. He said that everyone was amazed that he killed werewolves with a flick of his finger and they should have seen the carnage. There were many dead monkeys lying around them. The main character, catching himself, swore. He thought that thanks to Kim Min-soo, he remembered that they were in the underground parking lot of an apartment building, and in other words, there were almost no blind spots for the cameras. Looking at the security camera, he said that everything was captured on them. Standing in front of the big red portal, Kim Min-soo said that they needed to destroy the gate. The main character asked why, because if they leave them, the monsters will continue to appear and this will be a convenient place for farming. He replied that if they did that, then monsters of a higher level would not appear on the ground. Lee Young thought that the blue monkeys were level 14 monsters and he was now closer to level 18 and it was simply not profitable to kill monkeys and he was only here because there were no higher level dungeons yet. He asked me what it meant. Kim Min-soo replied that high-level dungeons only appear after destroying low-level ones. He asked if he thought that millions of people could all stop destroying low-level dungeons together. He said it was impossible. The main character thought this was true and he knows firsthand that people have always been incredibly selfish. He asked with a smirk if this meant that the more dungeons he cleared, the harder it would be for other players. Kim Min-soo thoughtfully agreed and said that if he closed the level 14 dungeon after only 6 days of starting the game, then level 15 dungeons would start appearing in a couple of hours. He said that in his previous life, the level 14 gate wasn't reached until 29 days after the game started. Lee Young asked in surprise how he knew that. Kim Min-soo said that he didn't seem to know. On his phone screen was a website called The Games. Kim Min-soo said that he is sure that he has played computer games before and this game also has a community that shares a lot of information. Folding his arms across his chest, the protagonist asked if he was getting his information from there. He replied that it was, and players post information about the dungeons they cleared here and the fastest clearing time is updated according to when a dungeon of the same level was closed. Kim Min-soo said that the Blue Monkey dungeon isn't the only level 14 dungeon in the world and the Green Orcs are also level 14. He said that if, for example, either of these two is cleared, then level 15 dungeons will start to appear. The main character asked that since he was the first to clear a level 14 dungeon, there was already a level 15 dungeon somewhere. Kim Min-soo replied that it was true. Lee Young asked where it was. Looking at the phone, he replied that it says here that it is located in Gwangju, Gyeonggi-do. The protagonist thoughtfully asked when the first level 15 dungeon was cleared last time. Kim Min-soo replied that it was 41 days after the start. He suddenly exclaimed. The main character asked what had happened. Kim Min-soo suggested creating an account and uploading their time, as they were the first to clear a level 14 dungeon. The main character asked what the point was. Kim Min-soo replied that this site is recognized by the World Players Association and the ranks of players are determined here. He said that the rankings on this site are determined by who cleared which dungeon first and it can be considered an official ranking table. He said that, they say that, in addition to awards from their country, the top of the table gets the appropriate treatment. Lee Young thought that they probably chose the players to enter the last dungeon using the rankings from this site. Grinning thoughtfully, the main character suggested using the nickname Fearless. It didn't make much sense, he thought, and maybe he was just used to hearing it. Looking at his phone, Kim Min-soo said that he was already registering them. On the phone screen was written, Republic of Korea. The level 14 Blue Monkey dungeon has been successfully cleared. January 8, 1534. ID, Fearless. People in the comments exclaimed that level 15 monsters are about to start appearing. Kim Min-soo and Lee Young stared at the phone screen. Comments appeared one after another. After the game started, buildings called gate shelters were erected. Their goal was to minimize damage to the building and population from the clutches of monsters. All the gate shelters in the country were built in the shape of a stadium with a dome. Ordinary people who didn't become players would rush there as soon as a gate appeared near their homes. The little girl asked her mother when they were going home. With a smile, she asked her to be patient a little longer and the players would soon get rid of the monsters. The girl protested that she had seen on the internet that they had cleared the gate 29 days after the game started. She said she didn't want to wait another 18 days and wanted to go home. The man on the high ground shouted that the Blue 8 gate was gone and they could pack up and go back to their homes. The guy in the green t-shirt asked what he was carrying, because it hadn't even been a week and no one could get rid of them so quickly. The guy in the blue jacket asked if it was supposed to be funny. People started throwing garbage at the man, shouting at him to get off the hill. The screen behind him lit up. There was a video of the main character fighting with blue monkeys. People in the crowd asked in surprise who it was and if it was true. Someone exclaimed that the monkeys were really dead. Someone shouted that this was a new account. On the phone screen, there was a post that the main character and Kim Min-soo made. Someone said that there was no account with the Intrepid ID in a previous life. Another person asked who it might be. Another said it didn't matter and whoever it was, he was their hero. Kim Min-soo and the main character are walking along a city street surrounded by trees. Kim Min-soo said that in his previous life, a level 15 dungeon was cleared 41 days after the game started. Lee Young asked if it happened in Korea. Kim Min-soo replied that it happened in Japan. He said that it was the Red-Eyed Horse dungeon in Korea also had a level 15 gate, but no one could clear it. The main character asked what kind of monster is there where they are going. Kim Min-soo said it was a giant bear. He said that he shouldn't have any problems with monsters below level 20 because they don't use abilities and once they start, clearing the gate will take much longer. He said that if you read the games, he would see that there was a gap of 71 days between the level 19 and level 20 dungeon. Kim Min-soo asked if he felt that walking the entire 300 kilometers was a bit too much. The main character told him to just go. There were a lot of dialogue boxes behind him about how he changed the future and got 1 extra point. Lee Young said that each step is a separate decision. Clearing his throat, Kim Min-soo asked about the future changing thing. He asked me, with bright eyes, to imagine that he had dropped his pen and someone else had picked it up. He asked if it would be considered a change in the future if he didn't drop it and no one would pick it up. The main character awkwardly replied, maybe. Kim Min-soo asked if that was why he was walking. He said that the bugs that escaped from his feet, the sprouts that he trampled on, all happened because he decided to go on foot. He exclaimed that walking itself changes the future. A red truck stopped abruptly behind them. The driver, waving his fist, shouted to them that this is a road for cars. Kim Min-soo scratched his head awkwardly, then apologized and asked him to keep driving. Lee Young walked up to the driver and asked with a smile. The driver asked if he was deaf and shouted at him that it was a highway. As he drove away, he asked what they would do if they were hit. Kim Min-soo let out a sigh of relief. He was surprised to see that Lee Young had disappeared. The main character runs along with the truck and asks the driver what the problem is if he can overtake his car. The driver exclaimed in surprise. The main character told him to control himself if he wanted to live. The driver obediently apologized. The dialogue box says, you changed the future and got 1 extra point. The driver reflected that it had only been 9 days since the game had started and even if a person had invested all of their agility points, they wouldn't have been able to run at the speed of a car. He decided that he was just imagining things. Lee Young thought that it would be more useful for him to continue counting like this. He thought that because of him, the dungeons opened at a different pace from his previous life and this alone gave him the opportunity to further increase the gap between himself and other players. He thought that the memory of regressors becomes useless as soon as the future changes and even without regressing, he is able to significantly influence this gap. Clenching a black fist in front of him, he thought about level 20 monsters. Lee Young thought that this wasn't all and he needed to open the level 20 dungeon as soon as possible. He had heard that in his previous life, he had used a weapon that was only available to players of level 20 and above, which meant that it had also fallen from a monster of the appropriate level and he needed to hurry. In front of the main character is a huge bear, growling loudly.
Lee Young said that monsters will start using skills from level 20.
He punched the bear in the stomach.
The main character exhaled.
There were 3 bears in front of him and the main character said that he was strong. The bear hit the ground in front of it.
Lee Young dodged by jumping back. He ran up the giant bear's arm and the bear looked at him in surprise.
Lee Young grabbed the bear's neck and snapped it off. The bear fell to the ground. The main character said with a grin that they were attacking one at a time, so it would take a long time to kill them all. The dialogue boxes say, your level has been upgraded.
3 additional points are awarded. You changed the future and got 1 extra point.
The 3 bears in front of him swung their paws with a menacing growl. Under the main character's post on the games, there were comments.
The first one said, it looks like I'm not going anywhere in this life either. The second one said, let's just stop. It's time to start looking for part-time jobs again.
The third one said, there isn't a single player in our area who can defeat a level 16 monster, so what should we do?
Fourth, in other words, the monsters that destroyed our homes will soon reappear. Another commenter asked why this is even legal.
Kim Min-soo and Lee Young look at their phone screen.
People's comments praised Fearless. Someone said it was Korean and asked if it was Lee Young or Park Moo-sundae.
Another person said it was probably Lee Young because they said he killed a werewolf with a flick of his finger.
Another comment read,
2643029459493 Hanyang Bank, Kim Chol-soo, Mr. Fearless, I love you. Kim Min-soo looked at his phone in surprise and the protagonist asked what was wrong. He said that someone had just cleared out a level 16 dungeon.
Lee Young asked who did it.
Kim Min-soo replied that it was Poison Choi. The main character asked who it was and Kim Min-soo said it was Choi Chol-sundae. The main character, remembering the statue, chuckled and said that that guy was already level 16. Kim Min-soo said that he cleared the level 16 dungeon so quickly that it seems like he was just waiting for the level 15 dungeon to be cleared. Lee Young replied that he must have learned an important skill in that dungeon in his previous life. He said with a grin that someone interesting had finally appeared. Choi Chol-sun was a player who was called the Poison King in his previous life. He was the head of Korea's largest guild, the General Guild, and right now he's living up to his reputation. The main character said that he was trying to steal his stealth and they need to be faster. He asked what weapons he had used in his previous life. Kim Min-soo replied that he didn't know its name, but it was a black dagger. He said that people joked that if all the blood spilled by Lee Young's dagger was poured on the ground, the planet would drown in it. The main character asked why they were so infantile. Clearing his throat, Kim Min-soo said that it was a level 20 item, but there was only one level 20 monster in Korea, the Golden Leopard. He added that it is a scary creature.
Lee Young asked with a smirk how many times he needed to repeat that it didn't matter to him. Kim Min-soo agreed.
2 posts appeared on the game's website, Republic of Korea.
The level 17 Golem dungeon has been successfully cleared. January 9, 2111.
Republic of Korea. The level 18 Raging Ogre dungeon has been successfully cleared.
January 10, 51. Lee Young asked about the level 20 dungeon appearing right after the level 19 dungeon was cleared and where it was.
Kim Min-soo, looking at his phone, replied that according to the games, the level 19 dungeon is near Gangnam Station and the level 20 dungeon is in Yeoldong Park in Bandung, Gyeonggi Province. The main character replied that it was 30 minutes without taking into account traffic jams. Kim Min-soo said that they would be lucky if it appeared in a park where there were no people.
Lee Young said with a smirk that even if there were people there, they wouldn't be able to go and they could watch him get his weapons back.
The main character's status window read, Lee Young, level 21.
Lee Young said to invest extra points in strength.
The dialogue boxes say, additional points have been applied to the strength attribute.
Strength, 1033.
Clenching his fist, he said that now he could fight with his bare hands. Kim Min-soo awkwardly replied that he could see. The dialogue box says, the player's strength stat has exceeded 1000 for the first time. You have received a new achievement, King of Power. You have received the Petrification skill for an achievement. Petrification, first level, turns the opponent's body to stone for 3 seconds.
The duration of the effect is proportional to the player's strength stat. The main character looked thoughtfully at the dialogue boxes. He pointed a palm wrapped in a blue aura at Kim Min-soo. The main character asked if he could move.
Kim Min-soo said that wasn't the case. He asked if it was petrification and if it reached the power of 1,000. The main character said that this is true and quizzically noted that he is always so surprised when he does something. Kim Min-soo replied that it was amazing because he had just received the skill that Emperor Yun Song-wai had.
Lee Young asked about the Emperor.
Kim Min-soo opened something on his phone and showed him the screen with a smile. The main character thought that there was a large list of records from their past lives with the ID of the Chinese king. Yun Song-wai is a person with the ID Chinese king. Nicknamed the Emperor, he was a legendary player who united all the players in China. The games has a separate section with dungeon sweeps from their past lives and the ID Chinese king appears in most of them, which means that he was the first player to clear them. The main character thought that in his previous life, he had cleared more dungeons than him. He asked about the fact that he used to have this skill. On the phone screen, the player rating was displayed, with the Chinese king ranked first and Lai Young ranked second.
Lee Young said that the dungeons he cleared in the past definitely have items and weapons that he used.
Kim Min-soo enthusiastically waved his fists, admiring the value of the protagonist's strength and saying that it was much higher than top tier. Lai Young smilingly told him to go to the place where the level 20 dungeon would appear and tell him about everyone who would be there. He said that he would come as soon as he cleared the level 19 dungeon in Gangnam. Their backs were turned to each other, and Kim Min-soo replied that he would contact him immediately if he noticed anything strange. Above the head of the monster with one huge red eye is written, All-Eyed Mole level 19. Lai Young thought that he needed to kill them for the level 20 Golden Leopard Gate to appear. If anyone else on this planet clears a level 19 dungeon, the level 20 gate will open. He thought that he could just wait at them and enter as soon as they opened, but it seems that there aren't any players in the world who can clear a level 19 dungeon yet, so it's up to him to kill the blue-eyed moles. A police officer in a bulletproof vest asked the main character to show his documents. Lai Young thought that it looked like they were trying to evacuate everyone from here. He calmly replied that he didn't have them with him. There was a loud sound, and the policeman turned around. A gray one-eyed mole jumped out of the ground with a loud squeak. The police officers ordered to open fire and they started firing automatic weapons. The police officer shouted to the main character to leave the zone, because it is dangerous here. He told him that their guns were useless against them. He asked if he was a gambler. Lai Young replied that it was true. Behind the policeman, a blue-eyed mole leaped up, swinging a paw with huge claws. The main character looked at him with red eyes and used petrification. The mole froze, unable to move. He fell to the ground, and the policeman recoiled in surprise. The main character grabbed the mole by the neck with a black hand and crushed it, squeezing it hard. The dialogue box says, "You changed the future and got 1 extra point." The policeman allowed him to pass and wished him good luck. Lai Young went down the steps underground to the red portal. He thought that compared to the rest of the monsters, which were quite aggressive and stupid by nature, these ones were quite cunning. There are only 15 red-eyed moles in the dungeon. Standing near the portal, Lai Young asked when they would get out. There were many holes in the ground in front of him. He thought they were buried in the ground and didn't look like they were going to come out. He thought that if he tried to dig them out one by one, he would waste a lot of time. The main character called up the inventory. A blue dialogue box appeared in front of him. A voice from the dialogue box said that the blue monkey's fur exudes extremely harmful fumes when burning. The voice told him to be careful because they could be fatal. Lai Young thought that Kim Min-soo had talked about using the smoke from the burnt fur of blue monkeys to lure out monsters, so he saved up some wool. Kneeling down, he thought that there were 15 moles and many more burrows, and they had clearly caused quite a bit of trouble in his previous life. The mole jumped out of the ground, swinging a clawed paw. The main character blocked the punch with his black hand. He grabbed the mole's neck with his black hand and crushed it, squeezing it hard. He held out a tuft of fur to the next hole. The dialogue box says, "You changed the future and got 1 extra point." He threw the blue monkey's fur and a burning match into the hole. The dialogue box says, "You changed the future and got 1 extra point." He was standing in front of smoke-filled burrows, surrounded by dialogue boxes proclaiming that he had changed the future. Surrounded by dialogue boxes, he counted to 15. The dialogue box says, "Level increased. 3 additional points are awarded. All the monsters in the dungeon were defeated. The gate will be destroyed. Remaining time, 3 minutes." Kim Min-soo told the protagonist over the phone that he wouldn't really like it. The main character asked what had happened. Kim Min-soo said with a worried expression that there were a lot of reporters here. Lai Young told him to get rid of them and that he would come soon. Kim Min-soo said it was suspicious. He asked why no one from the guild was here and why if they knew about stealth, they didn't know about it. He said that he didn't see a single person who looked like a guild member. The main character suggested that they understand that if they come, they will not return home. The police officer said that the fearless one was Lai Young. Another said it was expected. Another said that he killed all the moles in just half an hour. The main character was standing next to a police car, Yulden Park. While sitting in the car, the main character told Kim Min-soo that he told him to get rid of the reporters. Kim Min-soo apologetically replied that they weren't listening. Hanging up the phone, the main character said that he would solve everything once and for all. People in the crowd turned around when they noticed Lai Young. The reporter handed him a tape recorder and asked him what he thought about players all over the world complaining about it. A female reporter with a piece of paper in her hand asked if he was deliberately trying to undermine the morale of the other players. The guy with the camera said that the whole world is undergoing terrible destruction and high-level monsters appear much faster than in the past. He asked if he felt that the responsibility lay with him. Enthusiastic fans asked if they could get his autograph and take a picture with him. Lai Young stood with an eyebrow raised, surrounded by microphones. He thought the chaos was noisy and annoying. He thought that after being a mercenary and living in the midst of exploding shells and gunfire, he had come to appreciate silence. He remembered the explosion on the battlefield. Lai Young thought that he would use this opportunity to make sure that the reporters and other vermin wouldn't come within 100 meters of him. He said it was their own fault that they were so weak and they needed to try harder. The reporter asked if he really thought so. The main character answered in the affirmative. He said with a grim face that weakness is not a sin, but those who complain about their fate deserve hell. A reporter with dark red hair asked what he thought about Bovard, who entered the last dungeon as a representative of Canon, saying that Lai Young is an overrated player who is strong now, but will become the weakest among high-level players in the later stages of the game. Lai Young asked which channel had the most viewers. A guy in a yellow shirt and a girl with pink hair raised their hands, shouting what they had. The main character asked what the Canadian's name was. A reporter with dark red hair answered that his name was Bovard. The main character sighed, surrounded by camera flashes. He gave me the middle finger. Lai Young said with a smile that it was for Bovard. The blue dialogue box says, Golden Leopard Dungeon, Golden Leopards, 7, maximum number of players, 2, dungeon difficulty, B+. Lai Young thought that all players needed to hunt 7 golden leopards, and the B+ difficulty wasn't easy. He was standing in front of the 3 leopards, wrapped in a blue aura. The difficulty of a dungeon also shows how rare items can be obtained in it, and B+ means that they are the best here. Frowning, Lai Young swung his fist, which glowed with a blue light. The leopard charged at him, and the protagonist punched him in the chest. The leopard snarled angrily. The main character twitched, squeezing one eye shut. Looking at his hand, he thought that it was a sign that this would happen, and hearing the golden leopard roar, the player loses the ability to use skills for a while. The 2 leopards growled menacingly. He thought that he would not be able to hunt like before. Spreading out his hands, Lai Young said with a grin that he probably couldn't use his skills here. The leopard charged, and the protagonist dodged. As he turned black, he thought that he wanted armor, and if their fangs or claws grazed him even a little, he would bleed. The leopards looked ahead in surprise. The main character hit the leopard in the face with his fist. He thought that with the armor, he could block their attacks with his forearm and then kill them one at a time. Unfortunately, he didn't have any armor, he thought. Lai Young stands next to the dead leopard. 2 pairs of red eyes stare back at him from the darkness behind. The crowd of leopards roared. The main character with a sinister grin beckoned them over wrapped in a blue aura. The leopards charged. Lai Young grabbed the leopard's neck with a sinister smile. The dead leopard fell to the ground. The 2 leopards behind him were looking at the main character. He thought that he would make grabs. A pair of red eyes could be seen in the darkness behind him. The leopard charged, growling menacingly. Grinning, the main character called for an end to this. Behind Lai Young lies a pile of dead leopards. He walks forward, holding the leopard's tail. Dialogue boxes appeared in front of him. You have defeated the level 20 golden leopards. Reward received. He looked thoughtfully at the dialogue boxes and wondered if he would have to open them again to get what he deserved. The main character was surprised to notice a new item in his inventory. He reached into the dialogue box. The dialogue box described a dagger wrapped in a red aura, dagger of destruction. A dagger capable of wreaking havoc on the wearer and everyone in its path. Can get the effects of the owner's skills. While holding the dagger in his hand, Lai Young touched the tip of the blade with his finger and said with a grin that it wasn't bad. The dialogue boxes say, all monsters in the dungeon are defeated.
the gate will be destroyed. Remaining time, 3 minutes. The main character thought it was a strange dagger and it didn't have any stats or even any extra damage. The description is purple. He thought that he had finally obtained the weapon he had used in his previous life. Grabbing the dagger with his hand, he used the armor skill. The dagger turned black, as did his hand. The main character used stealth and the dagger became invisible as well as his body. Chuckling, Lai Young thought that he was really getting his skills. He thought that, unlike other weapons, it doesn't have stats but it can get skill effects. In other words, the stronger the main character, the stronger he is. Lai Young walked to the dungeon entrance with his hands in the pockets of his pants. He clattered out of the portal in the city, where he was met by reporters. Surrounding him, they said that there were rumors that he was the one behind the fearless ID in the games. They asked if it was true. Lai Young frowned. They asked if the Golden Leopard dungeon had been cleared and if there were any weapons from his previous life in it. He thought that the reporters were once again surrounding him around the perimeter. The reporters were standing in front of him, looking at him expectantly. The main character glanced at Kim Min-soo in the crowd. He stood with his hands clasped in supplication. Lai Young thought that he had asked Kim Min-soo to get rid of them while he was in the dungeon, but again, it didn't work out. He thought it was excusable since he had neither the power nor the authority. After a pause, he wondered why they weren't there. Surrounded by reporters, the protagonist thought that there must be players here eager to get his skills and items. He thought that even the reporters were waiting for him all this time and the players weren't. He thought it annoyed him. The man with the microphone grinned. He asked him when he would get the unique God's Eye skill. A man in a blue jacket with blonde hair grinned and handed him a microphone. The main character looked at him in surprise. He thought of the Eye of God. Lai Young asked about the Eye of God. He glanced at Kim Min-soo. Kim Min-soo nodded. People asked him what his current skills were and said that a lot of people were wondering. Another voice asked him to say something. The main character stood surrounded by camera flashes. Another voice asked what his level and stats were. Lai Young replied that his level was 24 and his strength was 1033. He stood frowning, and the reporters looked at each other in surprise. The main character walked forward, and the reporters in front of him parted. He said that he had heard that now any of his actions are legal. As he left, he started talking about what would happen if someone decided to harass him again. He silently indicated with a sinister grin that he would kill them. The next day, the world fell into chaos again. The headline of a newspaper article with a photo of Lai Young giving the middle finger reads, "Middle finger in response to Bovaard's provocations." Another newspaper headline reads, "Force 1033, the appearance of God." Another headline reads, "The Golden Leopard dungeon was cleared in less than 40 minutes. Does it have any peers?" Another headline reads a quote from North Korea's foreign minister, "In North Korea, there are very few players who can handle monsters. Lai Young needs to be stopped." Another headline says, "If you interfere with me, I will kill you." The article contains a photo of the main character indicating with a gesture that he will kill them and a quote, "I refuse to be interviewed. If you come to me, I'll kill you." Lai Young asked about the Eye of God. Kim Min-soo said that he doesn't know if it's actually called that, but it's a skill that he had in his previous life. The main character thoughtfully asked what he was doing. Kim Min-soo replied that it allows you to see the player's stats and inventory. Lai Young looked at him in surprise. He thought about the fact that the God's Eye was a skill that he had possessed in his previous life. Kim Min-soo held up his index finger and said that this is a unique skill that not only exists in a single instance, but also becomes much stronger when improved. The power of unique skills is not only in the fact that there are only one of them in the world, but also in the fact that when they level up, their strength increases many times. Lai Young thought that by increasing the stealth level, he could make the objects he touches invisible, and in the same way, unique skills not only increase their stats but also get new effects. Raising the level of a unique skill is sometimes called second awakening. Kim Min-soo folded his arms, closed his eyes and said that since he was the only one with the skill, only Lai Young knew about its true strength. He said that it was rumored that at the second level of the skill, he was able to detect the tiniest constriction of the opponent's pupils or learn the rhythm of their heart from a distance. He added that, given that he only ever hit players' weak spots, the eye could be even scarier. He imagined the main character standing on a mountain of corpses. Lai Young asked where he was. Kim Min-soo said he didn't know. Pulling something out of his pocket, he said it would probably help them. He showed his phone screen, which read, "Cleared dungeons." He said that the chance is high, but not 100%. The screen read, title, Golden Leopard Dungeon.
Level, 20, Location, South Korea, Player, Lee Young. The main character thought that the games is a site that stores data about all cleared dungeons, including those that he cleared in a previous life. Looking at the phone screen, the main character said that there are a lot of them. He thought that the problem was that there were so many of them, and he definitely wouldn't be able to clean up each one. Lee Young thought that all the players had regressed and one of them would definitely want to get the Eye of God. He thought that it wouldn't be just one or two people, it could be both large guilds and low-level players. Kim Min-soo said that he should understand that he was one of the strongest players in the past, and there is a lot of talk about it. The main character asked why. Kim Min-soo held up his index finger and said that he felt that the rumors circulating among the players might be true. He said he was talking about Lee Young's project. The main character frowned and asked what he was saying about him again. Kim Min-soo said that the major guilds in South Korea definitely have a broad summary of every player who entered the last dungeon. He asked if he thought they knew a regression was going to happen. The main character thought that if they knew that they were regressing, then carefully collecting information about the strongest players in the world is a good solution, because it is much easier to pick up skills and items before someone else gets to them. The idea that they knew about the regression was absurd, he thought. Kim Min-soo replied that he hardly knew about the regression and just wanted to kill the players. Lee Young grinned and asked about the fact that they wanted to kill the players. Kim Min-soo replied that large guilds had very detailed information about famous players, where, when, and what they received. The main character asked what the murder had to do with it. Kim Min-soo replied that there was a connection. He asked if he remembered the stealth theft attempts. He said that they knew he already had armor, so they prepared nets and whips. Kim Min-soo said that now that he is stealth, they will come up with something else to minimize its effect in killing him. A lot of red eyes are looking at the main character. Kim Min-soo said that judging from the fact that they didn't succeed last time, it was logical to assume that they had a complete list of Lee Young's actions up to entering the last dungeon. He added that they are always waiting for an opportunity. The main character thought that these pieces of paper with information about his past life were now like a treasure map that would guide them through all the items and skills that he had. Kim Min-soo said with a sad face that he, like the other players, was a member of a guild in his previous life and their guild also did this. He said that in this world, skills and items are the main thing, so stealing them from others has become completely normal. The main character said that he still doesn't understand something. He asked that, assuming that he records information about all players who have items and skills that he needs, how does he know where they got them? Kim Min-soo replied that he would record the gate they had cleared. He said that back then, if they didn't have the skill in Gate 1, but they used it in Gate 2, then you can guess that it was obtained in Gate 1. Lee Young thought that players were willing to kill others for items and skills and to make things easier for themselves. They followed up watch every move of these players. Grinning, he said he liked it. He asked about the General Guild, a large guild that has always been the best in Korea. Poison King Choi Chul-sung, one of those who entered the last dungeon, is its head. First of all, since this is a large guild, they have an incredible potential for gathering information. Secondly, they had already tried to steal the main character's stealth. He thought that since they knew where the stealth stone was, there was a high chance that they knew the location of other skills and items as well. With a wistful grin, he said that he and Choi Chul-sung had some sort of unspoken arrangement. He said that he thought he knew why no one was at the Golden Leopard Gate. The main character said that they were preparing for a more important skill, the Eye of God. He said that regressors have little use for items unless they are legendary. Kim Min-soo said that they can safely craft items from materials from dungeons because they have knowledge of recipes. He added that there were a lot of companies involved in manufacturing in the past life. The main character said that it seems to him that there may be two reasons for the absence of not only the General Guild but also other players at this gate. Kim Min-soo asked what those reasons were. The main character asked if it would be easier to kill him when he had already collected most of them, because collecting them all one by one is somehow a chore. He imagined a crowd of armored men with swords, daggers, and staffs. Lee Young said that if you killed him when he did, you wouldn't have to waste much time. He added that this is only if they succeed. Kim Min-soo said it was impossible. The main character agreed with a smile and said that the only reason they didn't take the dagger was because they were afraid of it, and now they don't want anything to do with it. A post appeared on the game's website, Republic of Korea. The level 21 Black Orc dungeon has been successfully cleared. January 11, 1231. ID, Poison Choi, the main character, looking at the dialogue box, said with a grin that he was trying. He thought that players from other countries like the United States and China were also on the list at first, but starting from the 20th level, only he and Choi Chul-sung were left.
Lee Young said that the difference is small.
In his status window, it said, Level 25, Lee Young.
Stamina, 223. Agility, 573 plus 3. Strength, 1033 plus 3. Concentration, 1. Mana, 1. Extra points, 732.
Achievements, Brave Novice, King of Power.
Skills, Butterfly Effect, First Level, Armor, First Level. He decided to put all his points into concentration.
The dialog boxes say, additional points were successfully applied to the concentration attribute.
Concentration, 733.
The main character said with a grin that no one can be king yet. He thought that the Emperor achievement was obtained when he reached 1000 points of a certain stat and when his strength exceeded 1000. He received the King of Strength achievement and with it the petrification skill that the Emperor, Young Song-wai, had previously possessed. Shrouded in a red aura, Lee Young thought that a level 334 player would have 1000 stat points in total, and now that a level 21 dungeon had just been cleared, there simply couldn't be a player of that level. Kim Min-soo said with a smile that it was a good choice and concentration was important. The main character thought that concentration is very important in hand-to-hand combat, and he learned that if it is high, he will be able to use the rest of the characteristics even more effectively. He will be able to dodge more often and better see the weaknesses of opponents, and concentration is also useful when he can't use skills. The main character stands with his hands clasped and his eyes closed, enveloped in a blue aura. Kim Min-soo put his hands in the pockets of his shorts and asked if he needed mana. After a short pause, the main character replied that he had not finished it yet. Kim Min-soo admired that this was true because he used his skills wisely. The main character thought that the mana characteristic determines the ability to take and use mana from the streams around, and if everything is calculated correctly, then it will be enough.
Lee Young only used skills when absolutely necessary, so he didn't spend much mana.
Rubbing his neck, he said that he needed to increase his stealth level now. Kim Min-soo asked why not rush in and clean up quickly. The main character replied that they do not need to make a fuss if there is a way to avoid it. He thought that he knew that torturing hostages was much less effective in obtaining information compared to espionage and infiltration. Lee Young said with a sinister grin that once his stealth reached the second level, he would be at the General Guild headquarters. Kim Min-soo told the main character that he thought about how he always wears such unremarkable clothes. He raised his index finger with a smile and said that now that he was stronger, he should dress properly. The main character, lifting his jacket, asked what he meant. Kim Min-soo said that he needed something cool to show how strong he was. Lee Young replied with a smile that he didn't need cool clothes because he was cool himself. Kim Min-soo replied that he knew, so he thought that the clothes would make it more obvious. He looked down in frustration. Exhaling, the protagonist told him to guide him.
Kim Min-soo agreed in surprise.
Standing in front of the building's doors, he said that according to the rumors, this shop has the best clothes for players going to dungeons. When he got inside, he said with a smile that they sell not only ordinary clothes, but also unique items that make it easier to stand out from the crowd. In the room, 2 crossed swords hung on the wall and there was a row of shelves with potions of various colors. Colorful potions glittered on the shelves, armor sets glittered in the light. The main character was looking around the store while Kim Min-soo was talking enthusiastically.
He showed the main character a leopard print sweatshirt and gold jewelry, and Lee Young shook his head in disapproval. The main character looks at the set of armor.
The store employee asked if there was anything he could do to help them.
Lee Young turned around.
Kim Min-soo ran up to the store employee and said that they were looking for clothes that looked really cool. The employee twitched nervously. He agreed and told him to follow him. Kim Min-soo exclaimed in triumph as he held a box of clothes in his hands. The main character said that he looked happy and offered to go and pay.
Kim Min-soo happily agreed.
With an awkward smile, the salesman apologized for his bluntness and bowed, asking to be allowed to give it away for free as a thank you for their visit. The main character grinned.
Kim Min-soo asked if this was true.
As he left, Lee Young called out to Kim Min-soo with a smirk and thought that he couldn't have imagined that his reputation was enough to get clothes for free. The main character, dressed in dark clothing with a raincoat, walks down the street with Kim Min-soo. He asked how he could improve his stealth level. Kim Min-soo replied that the main thing for leveling up any skill is the level of proficiency.
The main character asked what it meant. He replied that this is understanding and skillful application of the skill. Lee Young asked if this meant that if he just kept using it, it would improve on its own.
Kim Min-soo said that skills also have a point system.
The main character thought about possession points.
When the skill level increases, a notification from the system appears. The blue dialog box says, the level of proficiency of the 10th level strength skill has been increased. If the level of proficiency increases from a certain action, then this action itself is called a proficiency point. Li Young said thoughtfully that since others have regressed, they know in advance what actions increase their skill proficiency. He asked what he should do. Stars shine above the bright night street of the city. The blue dialog box above the dungeon portal says, Goblin in Orc Dungeon.
Goblin, 11. Orcs, 8. Maximum number of players, 4. Dungeon difficulty, D. There are many gates in the world with the same monsters. Even if someone cleared out one goblin in Orc Dungeon, the rest will remain.
The main character and Kim Min-soo walk on the stone floor, having descended from the stairs on which the red portal is located. The main character thought that the dungeon of goblins and orcs became his field for experiments. Goblins are considered the weakest enemies in the game and therefore many such gates are not cleared to help beginners. Li Young thought that, apart from that, these monsters aren't even capable of scratching him, so it's a good choice for him.
He noticed something ahead of him.
The huge orc growled furiously. The main character thought about what action would satisfy the person who created this game.
He used the stealth skill and became invisible.
The orc looks around in confusion. The main character used the armor skill. Noticing that his skin had turned black and he had become visible, he realized that he couldn't use them at the same time.
He thought that maybe it would be too strong. Li Young used stealth once more and took out the dagger. He stood behind the orc, wrapped in a blue aura.
Kicking off the ground, he leapt at the orc from behind, swinging his dagger. He plunged it into the orc's neck. The dialogue boxes say, the level of proficiency in the first level stealth skill has been increased.
You changed the future and got 1 extra point.
The main character is hanging in the air above an orc falling to the ground. It clattered to the floor.
Li Young asked if it was really that simple.
He noticed Kim Min-soo standing next to the shivering orc on the ground. Kim Min-soo assumed that this would only be the case on the first level.
The main character took out a dagger from the orc's neck.
The dialogue boxes say, the level of proficiency in the first level stealth skill has been increased.
You changed the future and got 1 extra point.
The level of proficiency in the first level stealth skill has been increased. Stealth, second level, makes all objects that touch the player's body invisible.
The duration of the effect is proportional to the player's monostat.
Wrapped in a red aura, the main character said, done.
He asked Kim Min-soo where the General Guild headquarters was.
He replied that he was in Gangnam, Cheongdam district. Grinning, the protagonist noted that they were rich. The afternoon sun is shining over the high multi-story building, Gangnam district, Gyeongdam.
The invisible Li Young follows 2 people.
Next to it is a row of expensive sports cars.
Looking around, he thought that this must be the entrance.
The blue-haired guy told the blonde-haired guy that because of Li Young, they were left with nothing all the time. He replied that Li Young was saving the world and told him to just pretend to participate in the guild's life and keep getting paid. Laughing, he said that if anyone had heard this, they would have been kicked out immediately.
The guard greeted them.
He swiped the card across the keyboard panel. The door opened and 2 guys walked in with the unseen protagonist. The blue-haired boy's eyes widened in surprise. The guard asked what had happened. The guy said he just thought he saw something.
He told him that everything was fine. Li Young thought it was close.
He thought he should go. There was a sign on the wall, ground floor lobby.
The second floor is a strategic block.
The third floor is a conference hall. A voice over the speakers told all the officials in the building that the morning meeting would start at 9:30.
He asked them to meet in the conference room. Li Young turned around at the sound of the voice, standing thoughtfully next to the elevator.
He thought that now he knew where to go. The man at the podium said that today is January 14th and the meeting is declared open. The main character, folding his arms, thought that there were a lot of people here and this is clearly not the last time he sees them. He decided to memorize as much as he could. The armored guy with brown hair told the red-haired guy that there was no chapter today because he was in a level 23 dungeon. The red-haired guy asked if he was working too hard. There was a sign in front of them. A guy with light brown hair asked if he was okay there. He added that he would definitely be tired. Another guy told him that no one could go with him, so he had to go alone. A guy with medium-length dark hair said that the day when their leader will receive the Eye of God is near. Li Young tensed up after hearing the words about the Eye of God.
The blonde-haired guy coughed and asked how the training was going.
The boy with the blue eyes crossed his arms and said that they had nothing to prepare. The green-hooded guy agreed and said that they needed to keep an eye on Li Young. The boy answered him, swearing that it was a name that came up at every meeting they had. The guy with the gray hair said it was because they couldn't even catch him. He asked if anyone knew where he was. This is the vice head of the General Guild, Young Hansum. He asked how they would catch him if they couldn't even find out that much. Lee Young thought with a smile that he was here. Putting the glass down on the table, Young Hansum said that they had already given him stealth and could be said to have sacrificed the dagger. He asked them if they knew what would happen if they gave him the Eye of God as well. The person on the stage said that they were currently unable to determine Lee Young's location, but they are confident that he will appear at the designated location to get the Eye of God. He asked them to control themselves. Young Hansum gritted his teeth and swore at him. He shouted that he was much stronger than in his past life. He threw the papers loudly on the table and asked what he was up to, how he became so strong, and how they could catch him without knowing all this. On the paper was a picture of the main character giving the middle finger. The title says, Strength, 10 to 33. The Appearance of God. Young Hansum told him to look at it and asked if he thought a force of 10 to 33 units was real. Closing his eyes and rubbing the back of his head, he said that there was no confirmation that this was true and Lee Young definitely did it on purpose, wanting to scare off the players who were hunting him. He said that Lee Young wasn't that kind of person and he would rather they went straight for him. He told him to explain their plan in more detail. The man on the stage slammed his papers on the podium. He said it was a record of everything Lee Young did in his previous life. The man said that he obtained the Eye of God on April 17th in the level 34 Black Ogre dungeon. The main character listened with his arms folded. The man said that 4 of their players were killed in the process. He asked them to raise their hands. The guy raised his hand. He said his name was Han Woo-sung and he was killed by Lee Young in the Black Ogre dungeon. 3 people raised their hands. The girl with dark hair said her name was Lee Eugene. A guy with blonde hair slicked back said his name was Park Kwang-ho. The guy with the white hair said his name was Go Sang-hyun. Lee Eugene said that there must definitely be a rare skill in the A-rank Black Ogre dungeon, so the headmaster sent a group of them there. She said that Lee Young was already there. She said that he wasn't a famous player at that time and they ignored him. Lee Eugene recalled how they passed by the main character. She said that, to be more precise, they told him to get out of here. She remembered Park Kwang-ho saying this with dislike to the main character, who gave her an indifferent look in return. She said that's when it started. Go Sang-hyun said he was mad. Park Kwang-ho, trembling, said that he was afraid to even think about it. Lee Eugene said that since they were there, they knew the monsters well and were sure that the Eye of God would appear there. She said that it was thanks to them that the General Guild had this information and they also added some more details after the regression. Lee Young glanced at the papers in the hands of the man behind the podium. He thought that everything was really written here, the location of the gate and even the weaknesses of the monsters. The dialogue box says, you changed the future and got 1 extra point. The main character grinned contentedly. Choi Han-sung rested his chin on his hands and asked with a smirk what they wanted. Lee Eugene frowned and said that they had heard that the head was going to go there alone, but only their group and Lee Young were well known about this place. She asked me to give them a chance. The vein on her face bulged and she said that this time, they would take Lee Young's life and return with the Eye of God. Choi Han-sung said with a smirk that he liked her attitude. He asked if they had a plan. She said they were going to introduce the Sutu Ogre. The guy exclaimed that he was banned by the World Association. He asked if they wanted to destroy their guild. Lee Eugene said that if they didn't use Sutu, they wouldn't be able to stop Lee Young and they would force the Black Ogres to kill him. Park Kwang-ho said that they would help the chapter and return with the Eye of God. Lee Young sent a message on his phone and wondered if they wanted to die again. Kim Min-soo looked at the message on his phone in surprise. The main character asked him to find information about Sutu.